What if the grand monuments of ancient Persia weren't just breathtaking feats of engineering but silent messengers, whispering secrets across the centuries? Picture standing before the towering columns of Persepolis or the intricate mosaics of Isfahan, unaware that hidden within their artistry are coded messages, waiting for the right eyes to uncover them. These aren't just relics of a glorious past. They're puzzles carved in stone, holding clues to forgotten knowledge, royal intrigues, and perhaps even prophecies meant to outlast empires. For generations, historians and archaeologists have marveled at Persia's architectural wonders, but few realize how many of these structures double as elaborate ciphers. From symbols woven into tilework to alignments that mirror celestial events, the builders of these monuments embedded layers of meaning into every curve and shadow. Why would they go to such lengths? Some messages were meant to honor gods, others to encode royal lineage or even protect sacred knowledge from invaders. But the most fascinating ones, they feel like deliberate challenges, invitations to future generations to unravel their mysteries. This journey isn't just about decoding symbols, it's about stepping into the minds of the ancients. Imagine the hands that carved these secrets, the minds that devised them, and the urgency they felt to preserve truths they knew might one day fade. As we explore 50 of Persia's most enigmatic monuments, you'll discover how architecture became a language, one that speaks through geometry, mythology, and celestial alignments. Some secrets are hidden in plain sight, others tucked away in shadowy corners, but all of them tell a story far richer than what meets the eye, ready to listen. Let's begin. Among the golden sands of southern Iran stands the solemn yet striking tomb of Cyrus the Great, a structure as puzzling as it is majestic. At first glance, the simplicity of its six-tiered limestone design seems unassuming, but look closer, and you'll discover a masterpiece of hidden symbolism. The inscriptions here aren't mere decorations, they're deliberate choices etched with precision into the stone. One phrase in particular, repeated in ancient cuneiform, whispers of Cyrus's vision for his empire. "O man, whoever you are and wherever you come from, for I know you shall come, I am Cyrus who won the Persians their empire." Some scholars argue this isn't just a boast, it's a carefully placed message, an open-handed invitation to future generations to uphold justice and tolerance, values Cyrus himself championed. Then there's the tomb's celestial alignment. Its orientation isn't random. The structure points toward the rising sun during the equinoxes, a phenomenon that bathes the stone in a golden glow. This wasn't just an architectural flourish. For the Achaemenids, the sun represented divine authority, and Cyrus's resting place seems to bridge the earthly and the cosmic. Some researchers even suggest the angles of the tiers correspond to specific constellations, as if the tomb itself is a star map, encoding the empire's connection to the heavens. But the real mystery, the carvings that adorn the tomb's doorway, repetitive floral motifs and geometric patterns. At first, they appear purely ornamental, but historians have noted their resemblance to sacred Zoroastrian symbols. The six tiers might mirror the six Amesha Spenta, divine beings representing virtues like wisdom and immortality. Was this a subtle nod to Cyrus's spiritual beliefs, or perhaps a protective charm to guard his legacy? Every detail feels intentional, as if the tomb's builders wove layers of meaning into its very stones, leaving us a puzzle that spans millennia. Now, let's step into the heart of ancient Persia, the glorious ruins of Persepolis, where the Apadana staircase rises like a stone tapestry of power and persuasion. Each step is lined with intricate reliefs, a parade of figures frozen in time, carrying gifts from the far corners of the empire. But these aren't just decorative scenes, they're a meticulously crafted narrative, a silent symphony of political propaganda designed to echo through the ages. Take a closer look at the procession of delegates: Medes, Babylonians, Egyptians, and more, each carved with astonishing detail. Their offerings of ivory, textiles, and exotic animals a testament to Persia's vast dominion. At first glance, it's a celebration of unity under Darius the Great. Yet scholars argue there's far more beneath the surface. The precise order of the delegations isn't random. It mirrors the hierarchy of satrapies, subtly reinforcing the empire's administrative structure. Notice how the Persian guards stand taller, their presence dominating the composition, a visual reminder of who held ultimate authority, but the real intrigue lies in the gaps. Some carvings show deliberate erasures or replacements, like puzzle pieces swapped over time. One theory suggests these edits were political revisions, a way for Darius or his successors to rewrite history, scrubbing away dissent or elevating loyal allies. Look at the Elamite delegation. Their figures were recarved, their features softened. Was this an act of reconciliation after a rebellion, or a subtle warning to other provinces? Then there's the celestial symbolism woven into the staircase's design. The reliefs align with the sunrise during the Persian New Year, illuminating specific panels as if to highlight their importance. Some researchers believe this was a divine endorsement of Darius's rule, tying his reign to the rhythms of the cosmos. The repetitive motifs, lions battling bulls, lotus blossoms, aren't just decorative. In Zoroastrian tradition, they symbolize the eternal struggle between order and chaos, a metaphor for the king's role as the empire's stabilizing force. What makes the Apadana staircase truly extraordinary, though, is its duality. It's both a public declaration of power and a covert ledger of political maneuvering. Every chisel mark feels intentional, a blend of artistry and strategy. Were these carvings meant to awe foreign ambassadors or to send a coded message to future generations? Perhaps both. The staircase doesn't just depict history, it actively shapes it, proving that in ancient Persia, even stone could speak. Rising from the arid plains near Persepolis, the Kaaba-i-Zartosht stands like an ancient cipher carved in stone, a perfect cube of white limestone, utterly unlike any other structure in the Achaemenid Empire. Its precise purpose has baffled scholars for centuries, with theories ranging from a royal treasury to a sacred Zoroastrian fire altar. But the truth might lie in the whispers etched into its walls. The cube's surface is covered in trilingual inscriptions commissioned by the Sassanian king Shapur I, written in Greek, Parthian, and Middle Persian. These texts don't just celebrate Shapur's victories, they're a deliberate act of legacy building, a way to anchor his reign in both earthly power and divine favor. One passage even boasts of his triumph over Roman emperors, listing their names like trophies, but hidden between the lines are cryptic references to rituals, as if the cube itself was a stage for ceremonies meant to bind the mortal and immortal worlds. Then there's the structure's alignment. The Kaaba-i-Zartosht faces Naqsh-i-Rustam's towering cliffside tombs, where Persian kings like Darius the Great rest in their rock-carved chambers. Some researchers argue the cube's position isn't coincidence. It's a bridge between the living and the dead, a place where priests might have conducted rites to honor ancestors or channel their wisdom. The cube's interior, though empty now, once held objects that left indentations in the floor, hinting at ceremonial equipment. Could this have been a repository for sacred texts, a kind of divine library protecting Zoroastrian hymns and royal decrees? Or perhaps a fire temple where eternal flames symbolized the presence of Ahura Mazda? The most tantalizing clue, though, lies in the cube's geometric perfection. In Zoroastrian cosmology, the square represents the material world while the circle embodies the divine. The Kaaba-i-Zartosht's flawless angles might encode this duality, a physical manifestation of the struggle between order and chaos. Even the stairway leading to its entrance holds significance. It spirals counterclockwise, mirroring the movement of stars in the night sky. Was this a deliberate nod to celestial patterns, a way to sync human rituals with cosmic rhythms? Every detail feels like a piece of a grander puzzle, one that entwines politics, faith, and the eternal. The cube's silence is deceptive. Its stones, if you listen closely, hum with secrets. High on the cliffs of Mount Bisoton, a towering relief looms over an ancient trade route, its surface carved with the triumphant figure of a King Darius I, his foot pressed firmly on the chest of a fallen rival. This isn't just a victory monument, it's a masterclass in political storytelling, etched in stone for all who passed below. The Bisoton inscription isn't merely a chronicle of Darius's rise. It's a trilingual cipher written in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, a deliberate choice that transformed the cliff face into a royal decree readable by subjects across the empire. But beneath its official narrative lies a web of secrets, half-truths, and veiled threats designed to cement power and unsettle future challenges. Begin with the inscription's surface story. Darius claims divine favor, recounting how he crushed rebellions and restored order after a period of chaos. His words are precise, almost surgical, a list of defeated usurpers, each named and shamed. Yet historians have long noted inconsistencies. The timeline of events feels suspiciously compressed, as if Darius were rewriting history to justify his abrupt ascent. One figure in particular, the alleged imposter King Gomata, is eerily absent from other records. Was he a real threat or a convenient villain invented to legitimize Darius's coup? The relief's imagery adds weight to this theory. Notice how Darius's adversaries are depicted bound, groveling, their postures exaggerated in defeat. Art as propaganda isn't new, but here it's weaponized, a visual anchor for the text's claims. Then there's the inscription's hidden layer, its placement. Carved 300 feet above the ground, it was never meant to be read up close. This was a message for the gods as much as for mortals, a declaration etched into the landscape itself. The choice of location is telling. Mount Bisoton straddled major trade routes, ensuring travelers from every corner of the empire would see it. But the text's complexity suggests another audience, future rulers. The three languages weren't just practical, they were a flex showcasing Persian administrative brilliance while subtly warning rebellious provinces. We speak your tongue and we will document your defiance. Perhaps the most chilling detail is the inscription's final lines where Darius addresses posterity directly. If you destroy this record, may Ahura Mazda strike you down. This isn't just a curse, it's a psychological gambit. By framing the text as divinely protected, Darius turned dissent into sacrilege, even more intriguing. The relief's unfinished lower panel, where blank space stretches beneath the carved figures. Some scholars believe this was reserved for future rebellions, a stone ledger waiting to record new names in the annals of failure. The Bisoton inscription doesn't just announce Darius's authority, it weaponizes time itself, ensuring his version of history would outlast stone and mortar. Nestled in the rugged cliffs of western Iran, the tacky Boston rock reliefs unfold like a stone canvas, capturing moments of Sassanian royalty frozen in time. At first glance, the grand hunting scene depicts King Khosrow II astride his armored horse, bow drawn, as deer and boars flee before him, a celebration of royal prowess. But look beyond the surface, and each chisel mark reveals layers of hidden meaning. The composition isn't just a record of a hunt, it's a carefully staged allegory. Notice how the animals aren't scattered randomly, they're arranged in precise tiers, echoing the hierarchy of the cosmos. The boars, often symbols of chaos in Zoroastrian tradition, tumble beneath the king's arrows, while the deer, associated with divine grace, leap upward as if ascending toward order. This isn't mere sport, it's a visual hymn to the king's role as the earthly enforcer of cosmic balance. Then there's the king's crown, an intricate masterpiece of symbolic craftsmanship. Its radiating spikes mirror the rays of the sun, tying Khosrow's authority to the divine light of Ahura Mazda. Even his horse's armor, adorned with crescent moons, weaves celestial imagery into the scene. The relief's backdrop, a star-studded arch, frames the king as if he's riding through the heavens themselves. Some scholars argue the entire tableau mimics the Zoroastrian myth of the final renovation of the world, where order triumphs over chaos eternally. Was this a declaration that the Sassanian king wasn't just a ruler, but a participant in a sacred, universal struggle? But the most intriguing details lurk in the margins. Hidden among the foliage are tiny carvings of musicians and attendants, their faces turned toward the king in reverence. One figure holds a wine bowl, not just a luxury, but a ritual object in Zoroastrian ceremonies. Another plays a harp, its strings taut with tension, mirroring the hunt's controlled chaos. These aren't bystanders, they're part of the narrative, grounding the cosmic spectacle in human ritual. Even the king's garments whisper secrets. The folds of his robes ripple like flowing water, a possible nod to the Zoroastrian reverence for rivers as life-giving forces. What makes Tacky Boston extraordinary is its duality. It's both a public monument and an esoteric manuscript. The hunting scene's repetition of motifs, arrows loosed, animals falling, creates a rhythm almost like incantation. Some researchers suggest the entire relief functioned as a sort of spiritual battery, its imagery reinforcing the king's divine mandate every time sunlight traced its contours. It's propaganda carved in stone, yes, but also a prayer, a cosmological diagram, and perhaps even a challenge to future generations to decipher its deeper truths. The rocks of Tacky Boston don't just depict history, they encode it, proving that in ancient Persia, even a king's leisure was a language. Buried in the dust of Khuzestan, the Chog Hazanbil ziggurat rises in terraced splendor, a mountain of baked bricks built not just to touch the sky, but to converse with the divine. This isn't just an Elamite temple, it's a sprawling cipher, its every brick whispering in a language half lost to time. The structure's sheer scale is staggering, but the real secrets lie in the thousands of glazed bricks lining its walls, each stamped with cuneiform inscriptions. At first glance, they seem like simple dedications, King Untash Naparisha's name repeated like a mantra. But scholars have noticed something peculiar. Certain bricks bear subtle variations in the script, as if the repetitions weren't just devotional but deliberate codes. Some theorize these patterns mirror sacred hymns, their rhythms embedded in the very fabric of the ziggurat. Others suggest they might be astronomical notations, with the number and placement of bricks corresponding to celestial cycles. Then there's the ziggurat's alignment, a masterpiece of sacred geometry. The structure's corners point precisely to the cardinal directions, but its staircases tell a more enigmatic story. The main ascent faces the rising sun during the summer solstice, flooding the temple's upper tiers with light in a spectacle that would have dazzled ancient worshippers. But look closer, the angles of the stairways also align with key constellations venerated by the Elamites, particularly the Pleiades, a star cluster associated with their goddess Pinakir. Was this convergence of architecture and astronomy accidental, or was Chog Hazanbil designed as a terrestrial mirror of the heavens? Some researchers argue the entire ziggurat functioned as a colossal calendar, its shadows marking equinoxes and solstices to guide agricultural and ritual cycles. The most tantalizing clues, though, lie beneath the surface. Excavations have revealed hollow chambers within the ziggurat's core spaces that held no obvious practical purpose. One theory suggests these were resonance chambers designed to amplify chants during ceremonies, turning human voices into thunder echoing through the bricks. Another points to the discovery of bitumen-coated bricks in the lower layers, a material known for its waterproofing properties. Were these chambers meant to collect rainwater for rituals, transforming the ziggurat into a conduit between earth and storm-laden skies? Every layer of Chog Hazanbil feels like a page in a sacred manuscript, written in brick and aligned with the stars. The Elamites didn't just build a temple, they encoded their cosmology into its mortar, ensuring that even in ruins their prayers would endure. Standing before its crumbling grandeur, you can't help but wonder what other messages lie buried in those sun-baked bricks, waiting for the right scholar, the right light to reveal them. The Shushta hydraulic system isn't just a feat of ancient engineering. It's a liquid cipher, a maze of canals, dams, and waterfalls where water itself becomes the messenger. Carved into the rocky landscape of southwestern Iran, this 2,000-year-old masterpiece doesn't merely channel the Karan River. It seems to whisper its builder's deepest knowledge through every ripple and curve. At first glance, the system's practicality is undeniable. Mills grinding grain, aqueducts feeding lush farmland, and cascades cooling the air. But look closer, and you'll notice something extraordinary. The precision of the water channels follows geometric patterns so exact they defy the era's technological limitations. Some channels spiral in perfect golden ratios, while others branch at angles that mirror celestial alignments. Were these shapes merely aesthetic, or did they encode hydraulic principles too advanced to commit to parchment? Take the Gaga Bridge Dam, the system's crowning jewel. Its arches aren't just structural, they're mathematical poems. The spacing between each arch corresponds to harmonic intervals found in ancient Persian music, a rhythm that some researchers believe helped stabilize water flow, reducing turbulence and erosion. Even more intriguing are the carvings along its base, symbols resembling cuneiform numbers, etched where the water's force is strongest. Local legends say these markings reveal the dam's pulse points, places where adjustments could calibrate the entire network. Were they instructions for future engineers, a way to pass down knowledge without words? Then there's the system's most enigmatic feature, the waterfall tunnels. Unlike natural cascades, these drops follow a deliberate stair-step pattern, each tier designed to aerate the water as it falls. But hidden within the rock faces are shallow carvings barely visible unless sunlight hits them at dawn, depicting waves and swirls that match the velocity of the current. Some hydrologists argue these aren't decorations but diagrams, a prehistoric textbook illustrating fluid dynamics. The most compelling evidence, the tunnel's acoustics. When water rushes through at full force, the sound resonates at frequencies known to ancient Zoroastrian priests as purifying tones, suggesting the system wasn't just functional but ritualistic, blending science and spirituality. What truly sets Shushta apart, though, is its legacy. For centuries, Persian farmers maintained the system using oral tradition, stories about the water's memory and the right angles of life. Modern engineers have confirmed that these tales often encoded precise maintenance techniques, like how to clear silt without disrupting flow. The system's longevity hints at a genius beyond brute force. It's a monument that taught as it served, its lessons flowing as endlessly as the Karan's waters. To stand here isn't just to witness ancient ingenuity, it's to hear the echo of a civilization that knew how to write its wisdom in stone and river alike. Rising from the desert like a mirage of baked earth, the Arg-e-Bam stands as one of the most imposing mud brick fortresses ever constructed. At first glance, its towering walls and labyrinthine corridors seem purely utilitarian, a fortress built to withstand siege after siege. But beneath the surface of its sun-baked bricks lies a hidden language of geometry, one that scholars believe may encode everything from Sufi mysticism to wartime secrets. Take the citadel's iconic honeycomb patterns repeating across its walls in hypnotic precision. These aren't just decorative, their interlocking hexagons mirror sacred Islamic tessellations found in Sufi lodges, symbolizing the infinite nature of divine creation. Some historians argue the patterns double as mnemonic devices, guiding initiates through meditative rituals by tracing the shapes with their fingers. Others point to their strategic placement. Certain designs appear only near armories or granaries, hinting at a coded system to help defenders navigate the fortress during attacks. Then there's the brickwork itself. Unlike ordinary masonry, BAM's bricks alternate between raised and recessed textures, creating subtle ridges that cast shifting shadows throughout the day. During the equinoxes, these shadows align to form larger, fleeting symbols, a six-pointed star at noon, a cascading wave by dusk. Was this celestial choreography intentional? Local lore speaks of the citadel's architects as shadow weavers, masters who understood how light could turn walls into parchment. The most compelling mystery, though, lies in the citadel's layout. From above, its winding streets and staggered buildings resemble a fractal, a design where smaller parts echo the whole. This self-similarity isn't accidental. It's a hallmark of Sufi cosmology, reflecting the belief that the microcosm mirrors the macrocosm. But there's a pragmatic twist. The fractal design also created acoustic dead zones, allowing defenders to overhear invaders while masking their own movements. Even the clay used in construction holds secrets mixed with crushed pottery shards. It produced a material that absorbed vibrations, turning the fortress itself into a kind of eavesdropping device. Arg-e-Bam isn't just a fortress, it's a paradox, both a shield against armies and a sanctuary for esoteric knowledge. Every brick, every shadow, every whispered echo in its corridors feels like a piece of a grander cipher, one that balanced the earthly and the divine in a single monumental equation. Towering over the northern plains of Iran, the Gonbad-e-Kabus needle-like silhouette pierces the sky with an almost otherworldly precision, a 1,000-year-old monument that defies both time and gravity. At first glance, this UNESCO-listed brick tower appears deceptively simple. A slender, 10-sided prism crowned by a conical roof, its unadorned surface broken only by 2 encircling bands of Kufic script. But these inscriptions aren't mere decoration, they're the first clue to a deeper mystery. The eastern band declares the tower's construction in the year 375 of the Islamic calendar, while the western bears the name of its patron, Qabus ibn Vashmgir, a Ziyarid ruler and scholar. Yet the letters themselves are arranged with geometric perfection, their angular forms mirroring the tower's own proportions. Some linguists argue the spacing between words follows a rhythmic pattern, echoing Persian poetic meters, a subtle nod to Qabus's famed love of literature, or perhaps something more esoteric. Then there's the tower's architecture, a masterpiece of hidden mathematics. The structure's height, exactly 52 meters, matches its diameter multiplied by pi, a ratio that aligns with celestial calculations used in medieval Persian astronomy. Even more intriguing is the interior's acoustics. A whisper at the base travels upward with unnatural clarity, a phenomenon locals once attributed to the tower singing to the stars. Modern researchers have noted how the design amplifies specific frequencies, particularly those resembling ancient Zoroastrian mantras. Was this intentional? Qabus, though a Muslim ruler, was deeply influenced by pre-Islamic Persian science, and some scholars suggest the tower's proportions encode sacred geometry tied to the constellations. The 10 exterior facets might correspond to the decimal system perfected by Persian mathematicians, while the conical roof's angle, precisely 58 degrees, aligns with the sun's zenith during the summer solstice in the region. But the most haunting theory revolves around the tower's original purpose. Unlike most Islamic monuments, Gonbad-e-Kabus lacks any obvious funerary inscriptions or burial chambers. Yet historical accounts hint that Qabus, a ruler obsessed with immortality, may have designed it as a threshold between worlds. A narrow staircase inside spirals upward but leads nowhere, stopping abruptly just below the roof. Some believe this was a symbolic ascent, a physical representation of the soul's journey toward enlightenment. Others point to the tower's shadow. At noon during the equinoxes, it disappears entirely, as if the structure momentarily dissolves into the earth, a trick of light that might have held profound spiritual significance for those who built it. Gonbad-e-Kabus doesn't just stand as a marvel of engineering. It embodies a confluence of science, mysticism, and political theater. Every brick, every angle, every carefully chiseled letter feels like a fragment of a grander cipher, one that Qabus intended not just for his contemporaries, but for those who would stand beneath its shadow a millennium later, still puzzling over its secrets. Gleaming like a turquoise jewel against the arid plains of northwestern Iran, the Sassanian dome dominates the horizon with its otherworldly presence. This 14th century mausoleum, built for the Ilkhanid ruler Urartu, isn't just an architectural marvel. It's a labyrinth of sacred geometry and coded symbology, where every tile and angle whispers of the soul's ascent. At first glance, the dome's dazzling blue mosaics seem purely decorative, but step inside, and the patterns come alive with hidden intent. The octagonal floor plan isn't arbitrary. In Sufi tradition, the number 8 symbolizes the stages of spiritual enlightenment, from earthly attachment to divine unity. Each of the 8 walls corresponds to a step on this path, their surfaces adorned with intricate calligraphy that scholars believe doubles as a visual mantra. The repeating phrase, Allah, isn't merely devotional when viewed in sequence. The letters' elongated forms create an optical illusion of movement, as if the walls themselves are breathing in rhythm with meditation. Then there's the dome's crowning puzzle, its double-shelled design, a revolutionary feat of engineering for its time. The inner and outer layers aren't just structural, they mirror the Sufi concept of Zahir and Batin, the outward and inward selves. Sunlight filtering through the lattice windows casts ever-shifting patterns across the interior, transforming the space into a living metaphor for the soul's journey through illusion toward truth. Local legends claim the dome's acoustic properties amplify whispered prayers into resonant echoes, a phenomenon some mystics interpreted as the universe answering back. But the most tantalizing clue lies in the turquoise tiles themselves. Under ultraviolet light, researchers have detected faint traces of gold leaf beneath the glaze, arranged in constellations that match the night sky during Urartu's birth. Was this a secret astrological map linking the ruler's destiny to the heavens? The mausoleum's stairwells deepen the mystery. Hidden behind false arches, their steps ascend in irregular intervals, mimicking the Sufi belief that spiritual progress isn't linear but cyclical. One particular alcove, accessible only at dawn during the spring equinox, frames a beam of light that illuminates a single mosaic star, a symbol scholars associate with the seal of the saints, a Sufi prophecy of humanity's ultimate guide. Whether Urartu intended his tomb as a roadmap for future seekers or simply a monument to his own ambition, the Sassanian dome endures as a testament to the Ilkhanid's obsession with encoding the cosmic into the tangible. Its beauty is undeniable, but its true genius lies in the layers of meaning waiting to be unraveled by those who look beyond the glimmering surface. In the heart of Isfahan's Naksh-e-Jahan Square, the Sheikh Lotfollah Mosque crouches beneath its iconic dome, a structure so perfectly proportioned it seems to defy the very laws of physics. But step inside at dawn when the first light filters through its lattice windows, and you'll discover this isn't just a masterpiece of Persian architecture, it's a whispering gallery of the divine. The dome's curvature creates an acoustic phenomenon so precise. A murmur at one end travels with unsettling clarity to the opposite side, as if the walls themselves are eavesdropping. This isn't accidental. Architects of the Safavid era designed the space to amplify specific frequencies, particularly the human voice reciting Quranic verse. Stand beneath the center of the dome and speak, and your words resonate with doubled intensity, while off-center whispers mysteriously redirect, seeming to emanate from the walls rather than the speaker. Some acousticians argue the dome's plaster contains crushed gemstones, a medieval technique to refine sound diffusion, turning prayer into an almost three-dimensional experience. Then there's the calligraphy, an elegant spiral of Quranic inscriptions winding inward toward the dome's apex. At first glance, the script appears uniformly gilded, but sunlight reveals a cunning design. Certain letters are subtly raised, their edges catching light at different angles throughout the day. These aren't mere decorations, they're sonic landmarks. Researchers have found that when a reader follows these highlighted passages aloud, their voice naturally modulates to match the dome's resonant frequencies, creating harmonics that linger in the air like echoes of the unseen. Was this a form of encrypted pedagogy, a way to teach proper tajweed, the art of Quranic recitation through architecture itself? The most compelling theory, though, lies in the mosque's orientation. Unlike most Islamic structures, Sheikh Lotfallah has no minarets, a deliberate choice that scholars link to its role as a private royal chapel. The dome's interior, bathed in ever-shifting light, was designed for solitary contemplation. The whispering effect, then, might have served a dual purpose, allowing Shah Abbas's family to receive spiritual instruction without public scrutiny, while also creating the illusion of divine presence, a voice without a visible source. Even the tiles play their part. Their intricate floral patterns aren't random. The density of their arrangement corresponds to sound-absorbing zones, subtly guiding whispers along predetermined paths. To stand here is to witness a sacred riddle in brick and mortar. The mosque doesn't just amplify sound, it choreographs it, turning human speech into an instrument tuned to the heavens. Whether a technological marvel or a stroke of mystical genius, one thing is certain: Sheikh Lotfallah's dome wasn't built to impress the eye alone. It was meant to awaken the ear, proving that in Persian architecture, even silence speaks volumes. High in the Ali Kapı Palace, overlooking Isfahan's bustling Nakshi-Jahan Square, lies a room that seems to hum even in silence: the legendary music room. At first glance, its walls appear adorned with nothing more than delicate stucco tracery, a lacework of floral vines and geometric arabesques. But lean closer, and the patterns reveal an astonishing secret: these aren't just decorations. They're a visual symphony, a codex of sound frozen in plaster. Each rosette, each curling tendril, is positioned with such precision that Safavid court musicians allegedly interpreted them as musical notation. Some scholars argue the designs map to the intervals of the Persian dastgah system, microtonal scales that defined the era's classical music. Notice how certain clusters of pedals align in groups of 3 or 5, mirroring the rhythmic cycles of traditional compositions. Even the negative spaces between the carvings may hold meaning. Gaps in the lattice correspond to pauses or breath marks in performance, turning the entire room into a giant musical score waiting to be heard. Then there's the room's celestial resonance. The ceiling's central medallion isn't merely ornamental, its radiating spokes divide the dome into 12 sections, echoing both the 12 maqams of Persian music and the zodiac signs. When sunlight streams through the lattice windows at midday, shadows dance across the stucco in patterns that local artisans claim match the movement of planetary orbits. Could this have been intentional? The Safavids were deeply influenced by the concept of music of the spheres, the ancient belief that celestial bodies produced harmonic vibrations. The room's acoustics amplify this theory. Sing a sustained note near the western wall, and the sound refracts off the carvings at intervals that create natural overtones, mimicking the Pythagorean ratios of planetary distances. But the most compelling clue lies in the room's hidden symmetries. Certain panels repeat at intervals that correspond to the golden ratio, a mathematical constant revered by Persian scholars for its aesthetic and harmonic perfection. These panels aren't randomly placed, they form a spiral leading upward, a path some musicians believe guides the eye and ear through ascending melodic modes. Even the materials whisper secrets. The plaster contains traces of crushed quartz, a mineral known to vibrate at specific frequencies. When instruments were played here during royal gatherings, the walls may have subtly amplified certain tones, creating an otherworldly resonance that listeners described as the palace singing back. Was this room a concert hall, a tonal laboratory, or a metaphysical bridge between earth and heaven? Perhaps all three. Its genius lies in its ambiguity, a space where art, science, and spirituality converge. To stand here isn't just to witness Safavid craftsmanship, it's to stand inside an instrument, one whose music lingers in the silent language of plaster and shadow. Behind the ornate doors of Isfahan's Vank Cathedral, a visual feast of frescoes and gilded arches unfolds. But beneath its surface beauty lies a far more urgent story written in code. While most visitors marvel at the vibrant biblical scenes adorning the walls, few notice the subtle anomalies. Saints holding unusual objects, off-center halos, even oddly placed animals tucked into corners. These aren't artistic mistakes, they're cryptographic breadcrumbs left by the Armenian community that built this sanctuary in exile. After their forced relocation by Shah Abbas in the early 17th century, these artists and theologians faced an impossible choice: how to preserve their endangered history under watchful eyes. Their solution, a visual cipher woven into sacred art. Take the cathedral's famed Last Judgment mural. At first glance, it follows traditional Christian iconography, but the details tell a different tale. The damned portrayed beneath the archangel's sword bear uncanny resemblances to known persecutors of Armenians, their faces modeled after historical figures. Even more telling are the floral borders framing the scene. What appear to be decorative vines are actually intricate calligraphic loops spelling out names and dates in Armenian minuscule script, a clandestine ledger of lost villages. Elsewhere, a seemingly innocuous depiction of Jonah and the whale hides a masterstroke of subversion. The whale's scales form a map of the Armenian highlands, its contours disguised as ripples, while Jonah's outstretched arm points toward Mount Ararat, a forbidden symbol of homeland. The most compelling evidence, though, lies in the cathedral's domed ceiling. Here, the celestial hierarchy of angels mirrors the structure of medieval Armenian resistance networks, with each winged figure representing a historical defender of the faith. Radiating from the center, 12 golden rays intersect at seemingly random points, until you realize they align with constellations as they appeared on the night of the siege of Yerevan in 1624. Even the pigments hold secrets. Recent spectroscopic analysis revealed traces of lapis lazuli mixed into the blue hues, a deliberate choice. In Armenian liturgical poetry, this prized stone symbolized divine truth surviving oppression, its indestructibility a silent vow that their stories would endure. What makes Vank Cathedral extraordinary isn't just its artistry, it's the resilience encoded in every brushstroke. These artists turned their sanctuary into a living archive, proving that even under duress, memory finds a way to etch itself into eternity. The frescoes may fade, but their hidden messages still whisper across the centuries, waiting for those who know how to look. Deep in the arid plains of southern Iran, the ruins of the Firuzabad fire temple rise like a beacon of forgotten devotion, a structure where flame wasn't just worshipped but woven into the very stones. At its heart once burned an eternal fire, its glow reflecting off walls carved with symbols so intricate they seem to flicker even in daylight. These aren't mere decorations, they're a celestial script, a language of devotion and prophecy etched by Zoroastrian priests who believed fire was the purest embodiment of divine wisdom. The most striking carvings flank the temple's central chamber, where geometric patterns spiral outward in concentric rings. To the untrained eye, they resemble abstract art, but scholars of Zoroastrian cosmology recognize something far more profound, a map of creation itself. The innermost ring depicts a single point, symbolizing the moment Ahura Mazda ignited the universe. Each subsequent ring introduces new elements, stylized flames representing the 7 Amsha Spenta, or divine emanations, followed by waves symbolizing the cosmic ocean where all life began. Then there's the fire altar's plinth, whose carvings defy conventional interpretation. Intersecting lines form a lattice-like grid, interrupted at intervals with miniature figures, some kneeling in prayer, others holding what appear to be measuring tools. One theory suggests these are instructions for maintaining the sacred flame, encoding the ideal proportions of fuel, airflow, and ash removal. Another posits they depict the Fravashi, guardian spirits believed to oversee rituals. But the most tantalizing detail, certain symbols only become visible when sunlight strikes the stone at a 60-degree angle, precisely the position of the sun during the winter solstice noon. Was this a calendar, a ritual timer, or a visual representation of the Zoroastrian belief that fire bridges the human and divine realms? The temple's orientation deepens the mystery. Its entrance aligns with the sunrise on the spring equinox, flooding the inner sanctum with light that illuminates a single, rarely noticed carving, a winged figure hovering above the altar. Unlike the rigid symmetry of other reliefs, this one is asymmetrical, its wings slightly uneven as if caught mid-beat. Some researchers argue it depicts the Zoroastrian angel Ashavahishta, embodiment of truth and fire. Others see it as a coded reference to the Sassanian, a messianic figure prophesied to renew the world. Local lore claims the carving's shadow moves across the altar in a pattern that predicts seasonal droughts, a claim modern meteorologists find eerily plausible given the temple builders' advanced knowledge of astronomy. What truly sets Firuzabad apart, though, is its fusion of pragmatism and mysticism. The temple's ventilation shafts, engineered to keep the eternal flame alive, are carved with tiny glyphs resembling Avestan script, not enough to form words, but enough to suggest a hidden lexicon. Even the soot patterns on the ceiling follow deliberate designs, as if the smoke itself was part of the ritual. Standing here, you realize the fire wasn't just an object of worship. It was a collaborator, its dance interacting with the architecture to create a living, breathing cipher. The priests of Firuzabad didn't just tend a flame, they conversed with it, leaving behind messages in stone and ash for those willing to read between the lines. Perched on the edge of Iran's western frontier, the crumbling arches of Qasr-e-Shirin whisper a tale as old as time, a king's passion immortalized in stone. This sprawling complex, known as Khosrow's Palace, is far more than a royal residence. It's a love letter etched into brick and mortar, a testament to the legendary romance between Sassanian king Khosrow II and his Armenian queen, Shirin. While time has worn away much of its grandeur, the ruins still guard their secrets, especially in the cryptic patterns of their brickwork. Look closely at the palace walls and you'll notice something extraordinary. Certain bricks bear faint, deliberate grooves, arranged in sequences that mirror the meter of classical Persian poetry. These aren't construction marks, they're fragments of verses believed to be excerpts from the epic romance penned by the poet Nizami centuries later. One section near the eastern terrace, when decoded, reveals a couplet that translates to "The moon wept silver tears when Shirin smiled," a line so evocative, it blurs the line between architecture and literature. But the true brilliance of Qasr-e-Shirin lies in its symbolism. The palace's layout mirrors the stages of Khosrow and Shirin's love story, each courtyard and chamber representing a chapter. The central pool, now dry, once reflected the stars, a nod to the celestial imagery in Persian love poetry, where lovers are often compared to the moon and sun. The mosaics that once adorned the floors, though faded, still show traces of intertwined floral motifs: pomegranates for fertility, roses for passion, and cypress trees for eternity. Even the palace's orientation is deliberate. Its main gate faces Mount Bisotan, where Khosrow commissioned a colossal relief of himself and Shirin riding side by side, their figures carved into the cliff as if to defy time itself. The most poignant mystery, though, lies beneath the palace. Recently uncovered tunnels, their walls lined with glazed tiles, spiral downward to a subterranean chamber. Here, archaeologists found an empty alcove flanked by two niches, one carved with a harp, the other with a wine cup. Local lore insists this was Shirin's private sanctuary, where she played music and drank wine brought from her Armenian homeland. But the tiles tell a darker story. Some bear scorch marks suggesting ritual fires, while others are inscribed with Zoroastrian prayers for protection. Was this a love nest, a sacred space, or both? The chamber's acoustics hint at an answer. Whispers spoken near the alcove reverberate with unnatural clarity, as if the walls were designed to carry secrets between lovers. Qasr-e-Shirin doesn't just chronicle a royal affair, It embodies the Persian ideal of love as a force that transcends mortality. Every crumbling archway, every weathered verse in the bricks seems to murmur the same truth. Even empires fade, but the stories we carve into stone and heart endure. Deep in the mountains of western Iran, the ruins of the Anahita temple cling to a cliffside, their stones still humming with the echoes of ancient worship. At first glance, the remaining columns and faded reliefs seem like mere relics of a bygone era, but look closer, and you'll discover a hidden language of water carved into every surface. This was no ordinary temple. It was a sanctuary to Anahita, the Zoroastrian goddess of rivers and fertility, where every architectural choice was a hymn to her power. The most striking feature, the temple's floor, engineered with a network of narrow channels that once diverted spring water through the sacred space. These weren't just practical drains, they formed intricate patterns resembling the branches of a tree, or perhaps the tributaries of a divine river. Scholars believe the paths mirrored the mythical Aradvisara, the celestial waterway Anahita was said to govern, turning the temple into a physical echo of her domain. Then there are the surviving wall carvings, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries but still legible to those who know how to read them. Among the geometric motifs, one recurring symbol stands out, a spiral that begins tightly coiled before unfurling into waves. To the untrained eye, it might pass for decoration, but Zoroastrian texts describe this exact pattern as a cipher for the eternal flow, a representation of water's cyclical nature, rising as vapor, falling as rain, nourishing the earth and returning skyward. The temple's priests may have used these carvings as teaching tools, tracing the spirals during rituals to illustrate the interconnectedness of all life. Even more intriguing are the carvings hidden in shadowed alcoves, where the goddess herself is depicted not in human form but as a series of overlapping circles, each ring representing a different aspect of water's power, purification, healing, and the unbreakable bond between earth and heaven. But the temple's true genius lies in its acoustics. The main chamber, partially hollowed from the cliffside, amplifies the sound of running water to an almost supernatural degree. A tiny rivulet trickling through the channels would have resonated like a roaring cascade, enveloping worshippers in a sonic illusion of standing beneath a sacred waterfall. Some researchers suggest the priests used this effect to create liquid hymns, chanting in harmony with the water's rhythm to produce harmonies that seem to emanate from the stones themselves. Even the placement of the temple feels deliberate. Built atop a natural aquifer, its foundations pulse with the same subterranean currents the ancients believed were Anahita's lifeblood. What makes this temple extraordinary isn't just its devotion to water. It's the way it blurs the line between the physical and the divine. Every channel, every carving, every echoing drop was part of a grander cipher, a language that turned architecture into worship. To stand here isn't just to witness an ancient ruin, it's to stand inside a prayer, one that still murmurs beneath the weight of centuries. Rising from the sun-baked plains of Kerman like a mirage, the massive clay walls of Rayan Castle tell tales not just of kings and conquests but of ingenious survival. This sprawling adobe fortress, one of the best preserved in Iran, hides a cryptic language in its very walls. The first clue lies in the exterior bricks, where seemingly random indentations disrupt the smooth surfaces. But look closer, these aren't weathering marks. They're deliberate symbols pressed into the clay before drying, a secret lexicon passed down through generations of builders. Some resemble water droplets, others branching trees or staggered lines like staircases. Local historians argue these were survival blueprints for besieged defenders, encoding locations of hidden cisterns, emergency grain stores, or even escape tunnels. One recurring motif, 3 concentric circles, matches ancient accounts of a well of last resort, a shaft dug deep into the water table beneath the castle's foundation. Inside the fortress, the mystery deepens. The inner courtyards are lined with narrow channels carved into the clay floors, zigzagging like serpentine puzzles. At first glance, they appear to be drainage systems, but their patterns defy practicality. During rare desert rainstorms, researchers observed an astonishing phenomenon. The channels guide water in specific sequences, filling hidden underground chambers first while leaving others dry. This wasn't just engineering, it was a fail-safe. If invaders poisoned one reservoir, defenders could follow the channel's coded routes to locate uncontaminated water. Even the castle's famed wind towers, designed to funnel cool air, double as signaling devices. Their interior bricks bear faint notches that whistle at precise frequencies when wind speeds shift, a natural alarm system distinguishing between seasonal breezes and the approach of marching armies. The most compelling evidence, though, lies in the castle's least visited corridor, a shadowy passageway where the walls are studded with clay tablets. Unlike decorative tiles, these rough-hewn squares display geometric patterns resembling astrological charts. Recent infrared imaging revealed something astonishing beneath the surface. Iron-rich clay was mixed into the designs, creating subtle magnetic variations. When ancient compasses' lodestones were placed near them, the needles aligned to form arrows pointing toward key defensive positions. Was this a covert training tool for new guards, or a way to coordinate movements during blackout conditions? The castle's builders left no written explanations, only these silent clay sentinels, whispering survival strategies across 800 years of scorching sun and siege. Tucked away in the quiet plains of northeastern Iran, the Haruniye Dome rises like a sandstone beacon, its unassuming exterior belying the labyrinth of spiritual riddles carved within. Step inside, and the walls seem to breathe with verses etched in elegant Nastaliq script, their curves and flourishes forming more than poetry. They're a map of the soul's ascent. At first glance, the inscriptions appear to praise divine love, but Sufi scholars recognize something far more deliberate. Each couplet is positioned at precise heights, mirroring the 7 stages of mystical enlightenment in Persian Sufism. The lowest, near the entrance, speaks of burning away the self, a call to shed ego. As your gaze travels upward, the verses grow increasingly abstract, culminating near the dome's apex with a single, enigmatic line. The moth becomes the flame only when it forgets its wings. The dome's architecture amplifies this journey. Sunlight filters through 16 latticed windows, a number sacred in Sufi cosmology, representing the stations of spiritual perfection. At noon during the summer solstice, the beams converge to illuminate a nearly invisible carving at the dome's center, a 9-pointed star. To outsiders, it's decorative; to initiates, it's a key. The star's points align with 9 verses scattered throughout the shrine, which, when read in order, reveal a hidden meditation technique. One verse, concealed behind the mihrab, describes listening to the silence between heartbeats, a reference to Sufi Hikah practices where rhythm transcends language. But the real cipher lies in the dome's acoustics. The curvature creates a resonance chamber where reciting certain verses generates harmonic overtones. A trained voice can produce 3 distinct tones simultaneously, an auditory metaphor for the Sufi trinity of love, knowledge, and annihilation. Even the bricks hold secrets. Their porous terracotta composition absorbs sound during daylight, then subtly releases it as temperatures drop at dusk, making the dome seem to whisper verses long after the recitation ends. Was this intentional? The builders left no blueprints, only whispers in clay and light, inviting the worthy to listen deeper. Haruniye's genius is its duality. It's both sanctuary and syllabus, where every stone teaches a lesson only the heart can decode. The poetry doesn't just adorn the walls, it dances with the architecture, turning space itself into a guide for those who walk the path. Stand here at twilight, and you might just hear the stones humming their oldest secret, that the truest maps aren't drawn on parchment, but etched in the meeting place of breath and brick. Beneath the soaring arches of Isfahan's Jame Mosque, one of the world's oldest places of continuous worship, lies a secret that only reveals itself when the stars align literally. Tucked away in a shadowed corner of the complex, far from the main prayer hall, a seemingly ordinary mihrab, a prayer niche marking the direction of Mecca, holds a celestial cipher in its intricate plasterwork. At first glance, its geometric patterns appear as delicate as lace, a testament to Seljuk-era artistry, but return during the winter solstice and the niche transforms. As sunlight slants through a hidden aperture in the dome above, beams of light trace specific pathways across the mihrab's surface, illuminating patterns that lie dormant all year. Interlocking stars flare to life, their vertices connecting to form larger constellations precisely mirroring the night sky as it appeared during the mosque's construction in the 11th century. The precision here is no accident. Each intersecting line in the stucco corresponds to an astronomical coordinate, a discovery that stunned researchers when they realized the entire niche functions as a three-dimensional star chart. The central motif, a 12-pointed star, aligns with the position of Polaris at the time, while the surrounding arabesques map lesser-known stars visible only from Isfahan's latitude. But the true marvel lies in the mihrab's dual purpose. During prayers, worshippers face Mecca, yet the niche's hidden design also orients them cosmically, tying their devotion to the movements of the heavens. Some scholars argue this was a subtle nod to the Quranic verse describing mosques as houses of God founded on piety, suggesting the divine could be sought not just in earthly directions but in the celestial order itself. Even more intriguing are the anomalies. Certain patterns refuse to align with known constellations, their purpose long debated. One theory points to a series of tiny, raised dots near the niche's apex arranged in a sequence matching the orbital periods of visible planets. Were these meant to track time, marking auspicious moments for prayer beyond the standard 5 daily calls? Or did they encode deeper theological concepts like the Sufi belief that planetary harmonies reflected the names of God? The mihrab's designers left no written key, only this silent stone puzzle. What makes this hidden masterpiece extraordinary isn't just its scientific brilliance, it's the way it bridges faith and astronomy without contradiction. In an age before telescopes, the artisans of the Jame Mosque sculpted the universe into their worship, turning stone into a conduit between earth and sky. The mihrab doesn't just point toward Mecca, it whispers that every act of devotion, no matter how small, is part of a grander celestial dance. Shiraz's tomb of Hafez is more than a resting place for Persia's most beloved poet. It's a living riddle where every tile and verse hums with layers of meaning waiting to be unlocked. Walk through the garden leading to the marble cenotaph, and you'll notice something peculiar. The turquoise mosaics shimmering under the Iranian sun aren't arranged randomly. Their geometric patterns form interlocking hexagrams, a design scholars argue mirrors the structure of ghazals, Hafez's signature poetic form. Each point of the star corresponds to a thematic pivot in his work: love, loss, divine union, creating a visual echo of his verses. But the real mystery lies in the calligraphy. The poems encircling the tomb aren't merely tributes, they're carefully selected for their ambiguous imagery, lines that devotees have long believed hold prophetic power. One inscription near the base reads, "The sky could not bear the weight of his light, so he cast it into the heart of man," a verse some interpret as a coded reference to the poet's own ability to channel the divine. Look closer at the cenotaph's east-facing side, and you'll spot a cluster of tiles depicting nightingales encircled by flames. In Persian mysticism, the nightingale symbolizes the soul's longing, while fire represents divine love. But the number of birds, 27, is no accident. It matches the lunar mansions of medieval Persian astronomy, systems used to predict celestial events. Could this be Hafez's nod to his famed Fal-e-Hafez tradition, where readers open his divan at random to seek guidance? The tiles' arrangement fuels the theory. The nightingales face different directions, their beaks pointing to specific verses in the surrounding calligraphy like a celestial compass. Then there's the tomb's most debated feature, the empty space beneath the cenotaph. Local legend claims this hollow chamber once held a now missing mosaic, its pattern a key to deciphering the poet's riddles. Modern archaeologists have found traces of lapis lazuli pigment in the cavity, a color Hafez associated with transcendent truth. Some Sufi mystics insist the chamber was designed to amplify whispers, turning murmured recitations of his verses into resonant echoes. Stand there at dawn when the first light strikes the marble at an angle, and faint shadows reveal barely visible etchings, possibly numerical codes corresponding to specific lines in his works. Hafez's tomb doesn't just honor a poet, it enshrines his belief that words could bridge the human and the infinite. Visitors still gather at dusk, divining meanings from his verses as the tiles glow like fragments of a greater cipher. In Shur, as they say, the tomb isn't silent, it's just speaking in a language only the heart fully understands. Clustered along the rugged slopes of Iran's Caucasus Mountains, the crimson-hued homes of a Biene village glow like embers against the stark landscape, but this is no ordinary relic of rural life. The village's iconic red mud brick walls are more than just architectural charm. They're a palimpsest of Persian spirituality, where Zoroastrian symbols whisper alongside Islamic calligraphy in silent dialogue across centuries. Notice how every doorway frames a carved wooden lintel, its geometric patterns unfurling like sacred mandalas. These aren't mere decorations, they're visual prayers, blending the ancient Zoroastrian reverence for the four elements with Islamic arabesque. One recurring motif, a 12-petal flower within a square, mirrors the 12 constellations of the Persian solar calendar while echoing Sufi teachings about the 12 stations of the heart's purification. Step inside one of these centuries-old houses and the symbolism deepens. The ceilings slope inward, forming an inverted V that some scholars argue mimics the shape of fire altars from pre-Islamic temples. Even the windows are positioned with ritual precision. Their wooden shutters feature latticework that casts shadows in the exact shape of Avestan script letters during the summer solstice noon. Local elders still recount how these patterns once served as clandestine reminders of Nowruz rituals during periods when Zoroastrian practices were suppressed. The village's famed red clay itself holds secrets mixed with pomegranate rind and iron-rich soil. It produces a hue that darkens during rainfall, a phenomenon villagers once interpreted as the walls weeping for forgotten gods. The most compelling cipher, though, lies in the village layout. Unlike typical Islamic settlements facing Mecca, Abiene's alleys spiral outward from a central well in 7 concentric rings, a number sacred to both Zoroastrianism, representing the Amsha Spenta, and Shia Islam, symbolizing the Seveners of early Shiism. Each ring corresponds to a different architectural feature. Homes with dual hearths, one for cooking, one for eternal flames, cluster in the 3rd ring, while the outermost holds communal ovens whose smoke vents align with the Pleiades star cluster during harvest season. Recent discoveries beneath the mosque courtyard reveal even older foundations, charred bricks arranged in Faravaha-like patterns, suggesting the site was once a fire temple carefully repurposed rather than destroyed. What makes Abiene extraordinary isn't just its preservation of the past, but its quiet rebellion against cultural erasure. The village wears its syncretism openly. Elderly women still don floral patterned white chadors recalling Zoroastrian burial shrouds, while their embroidery blends Islamic verses with sun motifs. Even the annual Red Soil Festival reenacts a ritual where villagers mix new clay with ash from winter fires, a tradition some anthropologists trace to Zoroastrian rites of renewal. Standing here, you realize these crimson walls aren't just buildings, they're living manuscripts. Their every crack and curve a testament to Persia's unbroken spiritual thread, rewritten but never erased. Amidst the volcanic lakes of northwestern Iran, the ruins of Takht-i-Solomon rise like a whispered promise, a sanctuary where fire and water coexisted in sacred harmony. The site's crumbling fire temple walls still bear traces of mosaics so intricate They've fueled legends for centuries, but these aren't mere decorations. Scattered across the temple floor, fragments of glazed tiles depict patterns that defy simple explanation. Spirals resembling underground rivers, grids that mirror nearby mountain ranges, even what appear to be star clusters inverted as if reflected in water. Some researchers argue these mosaics are more than art, they're encrypted guides, their geometric precision too deliberate to dismiss as coincidence. One particularly provocative fragment, now housed in the National Museum of Iran, shows a series of interlocking hexagons overlaid with dots. At first glance, it resembles a honeycomb, but when superimposed onto the region's topography, the dots align with natural sulfur springs, some of which were only rediscovered in the 20th century. Even more intriguing are the tiles' border markings, tiny, raised symbols resembling Avestan numerals. When deciphered, they correspond to measurements used in ancient Persian hydrology, suggesting the mosaic might encode directions to hidden aquifers. Local lore speaks of a spring of eternal flame, a mythical water source that fueled Zoroastrian fire altars without quenching them. Could this fragment be its map? Then there's the temple's most debated artifact, a half-destroyed mosaic panel near the altar, its remaining tiles forming a labyrinthine path that ends abruptly at the edge of the fragment. Infrared imaging revealed something astonishing. Beneath the visible layer, the mortar lines continue in faint traces, completing the design. When reconstructed, the full pattern mirrors the sacred precinct's layout, but with one chilling addition: a chamber not present in the ruins above ground. Excavations in the 1990s uncovered a sealed subterranean vault beneath the temple, its walls lined with bitumen to waterproof the space. Inside, archaeologists found nothing but a single tile, identical to those upstairs, depicting a flame suspended over rippling water. What makes Takht-e Solomon's mosaics extraordinary isn't just their potential as treasure maps, it's their duality as ritual objects. The tiles' metallic glazes contain trace amounts of copper and gold, materials believed in Zoroastrian tradition to conduct divine energy. When illuminated by firelight, certain patterns would have appeared to shimmer and move, creating the illusion of flowing water or dancing flames. Some scholars suggest priests used these shifting images during ceremonies, their transformations symbolizing the eternal struggle and union of opposing forces. Even the tiles' placement holds meaning. Those nearest the eternal fire altar depict cooler blues and greens, while those framing the sacred lake show fiery hues, as if the mosaics themselves mediated between the elements. Standing among these ruins, it's impossible to ignore the lingering sense of intention. Every fractured tile, every half-buried pattern feels like a page torn from a sacred atlas, one that charted not just physical springs, but the deeper wellsprings of faith. The real treasure of Takht-e Solomon might not be gold or lost waters, but the realization that for its builders, art and spirituality were never separate. They were twin languages woven together in clay and glaze, waiting for the right eyes to read their hidden verses. Perched on barren hills outside Yazd, the Zoroastrian towers of silence rise like silent sentinels, their circular stone walls holding secrets far beyond their grim function. These were no ordinary burial sites, they were sacred stages for the final earthly drama, where bodies were left exposed to the elements in accordance with Zoroastrian purity laws. But the tower's true mystique lies in the cryptic carvings encircling their upper rims, symbols that scholars believe outline the soul's passage into the afterlife. At first glance, the markings appear abstract spirals, concentric circles, and ladder-like patterns etched into the weathered stone. Yet to initiates, these were celestial roadmaps. One recurring motif, a zigzag line intersecting with a series of dots, mirrors descriptions in ancient Avestan texts of the Chinvat Bridge, the razor-thin span souls must cross to reach paradise. The dots, some argue, represent virtues to be gathered in life, their accumulation determining whether the bridge widens to safety or narrows into oblivion. Within the tower's inner rings, the carvings grow more intricate. Faint reliefs depict winged figures hovering above stylized flames, not just symbols of the divine but precise counts. The Western Tower's innermost wall bears exactly 9 such figures, matching the Zoroastrian belief in the soul's 9-day journey to judgment. Even the stonework's texture holds meaning. Certain sections are deliberately roughened, creating shadows that elongate at dusk to point towards specific constellations. During the autumnal equinox, these shadows align with the Pleiades, a star cluster Zoroastrians associated with the gathering of souls. The most haunting discovery, though, lies in the tower's acoustics. When wind sweeps across the parapets, it produces a low hum that resonates at a frequency near 64 Hz. The same vibrational range scientific studies now link to states of deep meditation. Was this intentional? Ancient texts describe the towers as places where mourners would chant to guide departing spirits. The stone's natural amplification could have transformed these chants into auditory beacons, their vibrations theoretically detectable even to those beyond the veil. Modern Zoroastrians still whisper of another phenomenon. On certain nights when the desert air is still, the carvings themselves seem to emit a faint glow. Geologists attribute this to bioluminescent lichen, but tradition insists it's the stones remembering their sacred duty lighting the way home. What makes these towers extraordinary isn't just their stark beauty, it's their defiance of decay. Though sky burials ceased decades ago, the carvings endure, their messages blurred by time but still legible to those who know how to look. They remind us that even in silence, even in dust, the ancients found ways to speak across millennia, turning stone into a language more enduring than flesh. Perched on a sheer cliffside in modern-day Fars province, Kale Doctor, the Maiden's Fortress defies gravity and time with its jagged stone walls and labyrinthine corridors. Built by Ardashir I, founder of the Sassanian Empire, this fortress wasn't just a stronghold, it was a vessel for secrets, its very stones whispering of power and deception. Walk through its crumbling gatehouse, and you'll notice something peculiar. The carvings flanking the entrance aren't the usual triumphal scenes of kings and conquests. Instead, they depict a series of seemingly random geometric shapes, interlocking triangles, staggered lines, and clusters of dots. To the untrained eye, they appear decorative, but military historians recognize these as ancient tactical diagrams. The triangles mirror the shield wall formations described in Sassanian battle scrolls, while the dots correspond to unit placements during siege defenses. One panel near the armory shows a peculiar zigzag pattern that, when overlaid onto regional maps, traces the optimal escape route from the fortress through hidden mountain passes, a contingency plan carved in stone for future defenders. Venture deeper into the fortress's heart, and the walls reveal another layer of intrigue. Faded bas reliefs in the central hall show a procession of figures, their identities obscured by deliberate erosion. Only under raking light do the details emerge. The figures wear crowns of varying designs, each subtly different from the last. Sassanian experts argue this isn't artistic inconsistency. It's a coded lineage, a visual chronicle of royal succession where each crown's ornamentation signals the bearer's legitimacy. The first figure holds a lotus symbolizing divine appointment, while later ones grasp swords or scrolls, hinting at shifts in power dynamics. Most telling is the absence of Ardashir's immediate successors. Their spaces are blank, as if scrubbed clean. Was this a later king's attempt to rewrite history, or a warning about the fragility of dynastic continuity? The true enigma lies in the fortress's subterranean maze. Narrow staircases twist downward to chambers with ceilings carved in concave spirals, an architectural oddity until you stand beneath them. When torches were lit, the spirals would have amplified even the faintest sound, turning whispers into audible commands. Recent acoustic studies suggest the chambers were designed to replicate the voice tunnels used by Sassanian generals to relay orders across battlefields without alerting enemies. But the most chilling discovery, a sealed alcove containing a single, life-sized stone hand, its fingers curled around emptiness. Local lore claims it once held a crystalline orb that projected strategic maps when placed in sunlight, a technology lost to time. Whether myth or reality, the hand's posture mirrors Zoroastrian ritual gestures for oath-taking, hinting that this was no ordinary war room, it was a place where military strategy and sacred covenant intertwined. Kale Doctor's genius lies in its duality. Every corridor served both practical and symbolic purposes. Arrow slits aligned with solstice sunrises to illuminate hidden carvings, and granary vaults bore floor patterns matching celestial navigation charts. Even the fortress's name, Maiden's Fortress, may be a misdirection. Some scholars argue Doctor refers not to a woman, but to the Old Persian word for purity, suggesting the site was as much a spiritual stronghold as a military one. To walk these ruins is to step into a world where every stone was a page, every carving a cipher, and every shadow a keeper of secrets meant to outlast empires. The fortress may be silent now, but its stones still hum with the urgency of those who built them to remember, to resist, and above all, to endure. Beneath the vaulted arches of Tabriz's Grand Bazaar, where the scent of saffron and silk mingles with centuries of whispered deals, lies a hidden language of commerce carved into the very bricks. This isn't just a marketplace, it's a living ledger, its walls etched with symbols so precise, they functioned as a clandestine codex for Persia's merchant elite. Look closely at the alcoves where spice sacks once piled to the ceiling, and you'll spot them, tiny, deliberate notches arranged in grids, their patterns echoing across the bazaar like a symphony of supply and demand. These aren't scratches from carts or wear their cryptographic price tags, a system so refined. A single mark could indicate both the origin of a bolt of Kashmiri wool and the fluctuating tax rate imposed by Seljuk officials. The real genius, though, lies in the guild vaults. Deep within the bazaar's labyrinthine corridors, hidden chambers bear frescoes that appear decorative until you notice the recurring motifs: clusters of pomegranates, each seed counted, interlocking camels whose humps form precise angles. These were no idle doodles. Merchants used them to encode trade routes, with the number of fruits representing days traveled and the camel angles corresponding to safe mountain passes. One vault near the carpet quarter reveals a startling example, a mural of birds in flight, their wingspans varying subtly. Modern researchers discovered these measurements match the wing lengths of falcons used to carry messages between caravanserais, their sizes indicating the urgency of the missive. Even the colors held meaning. Indigo borders signaled deals involving lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, while ochre swirls denoted shipments of turmeric bound for Venetian traders. Then there's the famed silent auction arch, where the bricks themselves are the auctioneers. Certain columns bear rows of shallow holes, each aligned with specific stalls. During peak hours, merchants would drop pebbles into these recesses to signal bid increments, the clicks echoing through the stone to discreetly update prices without alerting competitors. The system was so nuanced, the depth of the hole indicated the commodity shallow for spices, deeper for precious metals, while the pebbles material, clay for bulk goods, marble for luxuries, revealed the buyer's credibility. Some alcoves still retain traces of colored wax, used to stamp temporary ciphers on goods, their hues fading to near invisibility after 3 moons, a natural expiration date for sensitive negotiations. But the bazaar's most ingenious cipher might be its celestial clock. High above the central courtyard, a lattice window casts a dappled pattern on the floor at noon. Most visitors mistake it for decorative shadow play, but the dots of light align with hidden numerals along the arcades. On the summer solstice, these illuminated digits correspond to that year's exchange rates for silk, while the winter alignment reveals the going rate for rare incenses. The system wasn't just practical, it was poetic, tying commerce to the cosmos in a way that reminded traders their fortunes, like the seasons, were cyclical. To walk these corridors today is to tread across a forgotten spreadsheet, where every chip in the plaster and stain on the stone was once a vital line in Persia's economic epic. The bazaar didn't just facilitate trade, it encrypted it, turning whispers of gold and spice into a language only the initiated could read. The goods may have changed, but the walls still remember. Rising from the ochre sands of the Yazd desert like a mirage, the caravanserai of Zain-Odin stretches its circular walls beneath the relentless sun, a perfect geometric anomaly in the wilderness. At first glance, this 16th century way station appears to be just another stop along the Silk Road, its sturdy brick domes offering shelter to wearied travelers and their camels. But crouch down and run your fingers along the lower courses of its walls, and you'll feel them shallow grooves cut into the bricks, arranged in precise sequences of lines, dots, and angles. These aren't weathering marks or mason's signatures. They're a desert survival cipher carved by Safavid architects who understood that in this landscape, geometry could mean the difference between life and death. The patterns reveal their secrets when studied in daylight. Certain clusters of dots mirror the positions of key stars, not the typical navigational constellations, but lesser-known Persian asterisms like the merchant scale and the camel's hoof. These were celestial markers for nighttime desert crossings, when the sun's absence turned the dunes into a featureless void. A series of parallel chisel marks near the eastern gate aligns with the sunrise during the spring and autumn equinoxes, signaling the optimal seasons for travel before summer's scorching winds or winter's freezing nights. But the most vital code hides in the brickwork flanking the central well. Interlocking zigzags form what scholars now recognize as a topographic map, their peaks and troughs corresponding to underground water channels radiating outward from the caravanserai. One particular sequence of triangles points toward a hidden oasis 12 kilometers northwest, its location verified by modern satellite imagery. The genius of these symbols lies in their dual purpose. During daylight, they functioned as practical guides, but at night, when oil lamps flickered in wall niches, the shadows transformed them into something more mystical. The play of light exaggerates certain grooves, causing star patterns to appear, inverted, a deliberate nod to Sufi teachings about the interplay between earthly journeys and spiritual ascents. Even the caravanserai's circular layout holds meaning. Its outer walls contain exactly 16 facets, a number sacred in Persian numerology representing the stations of wisdom. Each facet's brickwork varies slightly, with subtle texture differences that would have helped travelers orient themselves even in sandstorm obscurity, a tactile compass when sight failed. Perhaps the most haunting discovery came in 2018, when infrared scans revealed moisture patterns beneath the courtyard matching the brick codes. The architects didn't just map existing water sources, they engineered the caravanserai itself as a condensation trap. Its walls and domes designed to channel minuscule nighttime dew into hidden cisterns. Those zigzag patterns, they're not just maps, they're instructions, showing how to angle one's hand to scoop precious droplets from collection grooves. Every brick, every line, every carefully calculated shadow was a lifeline disguised as decoration, proving that in the desert's embrace, survival and sacred geometry were one and the same. To stand here today is to witness a monument that refused to be passive. It didn't just shelter travelers, it spoke to them, guiding their bodies with starlight and their souls with symmetry, turning a night's rest into a lesson in reading the language of the land. The sands may shift, but the caravanserai's whispers endure, reminding us that the greatest maps aren't drawn on parchment. They're etched in the meeting place of necessity and ingenuity. Beneath the sun-bleached battlements of Arg-e-Karim Khan, Shiraz's formidable Zand-era citadel, the walls tell two stories, one of royal power, carved in official proclamations, and another of desperate defiance, scratched in shadows. While tourists crane their necks at the towering brickwork and ornate tile mosaics celebrating Karim Khan's reign, few notice the fainter marks, a labyrinth of graffiti etched into the lower stones of the prison cells. These aren't idle scratches, they're a silent rebellion, a lexicon of loss and hope left by those who vanished into the citadel's depths. Take the eastern dungeon's back wall, where layers of inscriptions overlap like a palimpsest of pain. At first glance, the markings seem random, crude stick figures, zigzag lines, clusters of dots, but prison archivists and historians have decoded a chilling system. The stick figures aren't people, they're maps. Their outstretched arms point to hidden cracks in the masonry, escape routes discovered but never used. One particularly elaborate figure, its torso filled with cross-hatching, corresponds to a tunnel dug beneath the citadel in the late 18th century, later collapsed by guards. The hatch marks days spent digging. Nearby, a sequence of dots and dashes mirrors the rhythmic patterns of Kurdish folk poetry, a covert way for political prisoners from the West to signal their identities without alerting Farsi-speaking jailers. The real cipher, though, lies in the graffiti's medium. Many inscriptions aren't carved but written in mixtures of rust and pomegranate juice, a fugitive ink that oxidizes over time, darkening from blood red to near black. Chemical analysis reveals these pigments contain trace amounts of sulfur, likely scavenged from tortures. The prisoners weren't just leaving messages, they were timing them. The sulfur acted as a slow-release preservative, ensuring the words would only become legible years later, long after their authors were gone. One recurring phrase, "The nightingale remembers the rose," appears in 12 cells, each instance darkening at a different rate, a staggered testament to successive generations of descent. Most haunting are the ceiling markings in the interrogation chamber. Here, the graffiti shifts from words to numbers, columns of tiny strokes grouped in sevens. Historians initially dismissed them as tally marks until a visiting mathematician recognized their pattern. They're prime numbers, a code used by Qajar-era Freemason prisoners to identify themselves to allies. The sequence breaks off abruptly at the number 43, the age of a prominent dissident executed in 1821. Even the act of counting became defiance, each prime a whisper of irrepressible logic in a place designed to break minds. But Agha-i Khan's walls don't just hold sorrow, they also cradle ingenuity. In the women's quarters, faint embroidery patterns are scratched into the plaster, replicating the stitches of banned tribal textiles. These weren't idle doodles, they were mnemonic devices preserving patterns and stories that guards couldn't confiscate. One elaborate tree of life motif, its roots entwined with Zoroastrian symbols, matches designs still woven by nomadic Qashqai women today, proof that the citadel stones couldn't silence cultural memory. The graffiti's ultimate irony, some of the most detailed markings appear near the old guard posts, hidden in plain sight. A series of interlocking circles near a barred window, when viewed at dawn, cast shadows that form precise Arabic letters spelling Adl, justice. It's a final act of rebellion, turning the architecture of oppression into a sundial of hope, its message appearing daily, fleetingly, for those who know when to look. These walls weren't just a prison, they became a clandestine classroom, teaching that even in darkness, the human hand will always find ways to write itself into history. Stepping into the mirrored halls of Shah Cheragh in Shur, as is like entering a living kaleidoscope, every surface shimmers with millions of fragmented reflections, dissolving the boundaries between earth and infinity. At first glance, the shrine's iconic mirror mosaics seem purely decorative, a testament to Persian craftsmanship. But tilt your head just so, and the chaos of reflections begins to cohere into something far more intentional. The mirrors aren't randomly placed, they're arranged in precise geometric sequences that Sufi scholars recognize as visual representations of the Wadat al-Wujud, the unity of existence. Each shard, however small, reflects the whole, embodying the mystical belief that the divine is both fragmented and omnipresent. Look closer at the dome's apex, where the mirrors converge in a spiral pattern. Under candlelight, the reflections create an illusion of infinite regression, as if pulling the viewer upward into the divine presence itself. Then there's the calligraphy hidden in plain sight. Among the dazzling tessellations, certain mirrors are cut slightly larger, their edges aligned to form the curves of Arabic letters when seen from specific angles. One inscription, visible only when standing on the shrine's eastern prayer rug, spells out, "La ilaha illa Allah," there is no God but God, in a fleeting play of light. Others require movement to decode. Walk 3 paces toward the Qibla wall, and another phrase emerges, "Knowledge is a mirror carried by the traveler," a nod to the Sufi tradition of seeking wisdom through journey and reflection. The most compelling mystery lies in the mirror's composition. Unlike typical glass, these shards contain trace amounts of copper and silver, metals believed in alchemy to bridge the material and spiritual realms. When sunlight filters through the stained glass windows at dawn, the mirrors project not just light but prismatic patterns onto the floor colors that correspond to the 7 stages of Sufi enlightenment. Local custodians whisper that certain patterns align perfectly during the solstices, casting coded shadows that outline the shape of a winged heart, a symbol associated with the 13th century mystic Rumi. But Shah-Cherog's true genius is its interactivity. This isn't a static monument but a participatory cipher. The mirrors respond to the viewer's position, requiring physical engagement to reveal their secrets. A step forward might fracture a hidden verse into abstraction, while a step back harmonizes it into clarity, a metaphor for the spiritual path itself. Even the shrine's acoustics play their part. Whispers near the mirrored walls refract into layered echoes, mimicking the Sufi practice of dhikr, where repetition of sacred phrases induces transcendence. What appears as mere ornamentation is, in truth, a multidimensional scripture, one that speaks through light, geometry, and the active gaze of the seeker. The mirrors don't just reflect, they interrogate, asking each visitor, "How many ways can you see the divine?" And perhaps that's the ultimate message: wisdom isn't handed to you. It's pieced together, shard by shard, in the endless play of reflection and revelation. Tucked away in the ancient city of Hamadan, the tomb of Esther and Mordecai stands as a quiet testament to Persia's long history of religious coexistence. At first glance, the structure seems modest, a simple brick dome adorned with Hebrew calligraphy, but the inscriptions covering its walls are anything but ordinary. Carved into the stone are passages from the Book of Esther, the biblical story of the Jewish queen who saved her people from persecution in ancient Persia. Yet interspersed among these familiar verses are less decipherable markings, clusters of letters spaced unusually, words written backward, and numerical sequences that don't correspond to any known scripture. Some scholars believe these anomalies aren't scribble errors but deliberate ciphers, a hidden layer of dialogue between Persia's Jewish community and the empire that sheltered them. One particularly enigmatic inscription wraps around the tomb's entrance, a verse from Esther proclaiming, "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise from another place." But look closer, the word "silent" is spelled with an extra letter, a Hebrew vav that disrupts the grammatical flow. In Jewish mystical tradition, such insertions often signify concealed meanings. When the verse is rearranged using the numerical values of those letters, it yields a date, the year 522 of the Persian calendar, corresponding to a little-known edict by the Sassanian king Kavad I, who temporarily granted Jews autonomy over their religious courts. Was this a covert nod to a moment of tolerance embedded in sacred text? The tomb's architecture deepens the mystery. Unlike typical Jewish shrines, the building incorporates distinct Persian elements. Its dome echoes Zoroastrian fire temple designs, while the interior tiles blend blue and gold hues reminiscent of Isfahan's mosques. Even the orientation is curious. While Jewish tombs usually face Jerusalem, this one aligns with Hamadan's central thoroughfare, as if symbolically bridging sacred and civic life. Local lore speaks of a now-faded mural in the antechamber depicting Esther and King Xerxes seated beneath a canopy adorned with both stars of David and Faravaha symbols, a visual metaphor for dual allegiance. But the most compelling clues lie beneath the tomb. Recent ground-penetrating radar revealed a subterranean chamber lined with bricks inscribed in Judeo-Persian, a dialect blending Hebrew script with Persian vocabulary. One fragment speaks of a covenant of the 70 languages, likely referencing the 70 nations mentioned in Genesis. Historians interpret this as evidence of a lost tradition where Persian Jews saw themselves as mediators between cultures, safeguarding not just their own faith but the broader tapestry of empires. The tomb's enduring power lies in its duality. It's both a Jewish sanctuary and a Persian landmark, its walls murmuring in two tongues. The inscriptions don't just honor the past, they invite a question. Can the echoes of coexistence, once carved in stone, outlast the forces that would erase them? Standing here, you sense the answer in the very bricks of quiet defiance, etched in Hebrew and sunlight. Nestled in Shiraz's lush gardens, the Kavam house seems at first glance a masterpiece of Qajar elegance, its stained glass windows scattering rainbows across sun-warmed courtyards, its reflecting pools mirroring the ornate facades. But crouch beneath the arches of its northern Iwan, and you'll notice something extraordinary. The floral stucco designs aren't mere decorations. Each petal, each curling vine, is a cipher carved in plaster, a secret language blooming across the walls. Scholars have identified at least 7 distinct floral motifs repeating in mathematical sequences, clusters of orange blossoms counting in Fibonacci spirals, pomegranate flowers arranged in prime-numbered groups. These aren't arbitrary choices. In Qajar-era Shiraz, citrus trees symbolized forbidden love, their bitter rinds hiding sweet flesh, while pomegranates represented rebellion, their burst of bloody seeds echoing shattered silence. The most tantalizing pattern winds through the mansion's private quarters, a continuous frieze of interwoven roses and nightingales, their shapes morphing subtly every few meters. When traced from start to finish, the variations reveal a startling transformation. The nightingale's beak shifts from closed to open, its wings from folded to outstretched, as if singing a ballad only the walls remember. Local historians argue this encodes Goldston-era poetry, where nightingales symbolized dissident poets and roses stood for oppressive courts. The frieze finale, a nightingale mid-flight, its talons gripping a rose thorn, matches a controversial verse by the Shirazi poet Farrukh, who was exiled for criticizing royal excess. Yet the mansion's boldest statement hides in plain sight. The ceiling of the central reception hall appears to depict a standard floral medallion until sunlight strikes at mid-morning, casting shadows that warp the design into something far more provocative. The petals elongate into sword shapes, their tips pointing toward 12 tiny, concealed portraits worked into the arabesques. Infrared imaging confirmed these are likenesses of Constitutional Revolution martyrs, their faces rendered in near-microscopic detail. One portrait shows a young woman holding a book, likely Fatime Sayya, a feminist scholar banned from Qajar courts. That her image appears beside a lemon blossom, symbolizing acidic truth, feels like deliberate defiance. Kavam House's genius lies in its duality. By day, a nobleman's showpiece, by night as candlelight animates the stucco shadows, a subversive manifesto. Even the materials whisper secrets. The plaster contains crushed rose petals from Shiraz's rebel gardens, their scent released when humidity rises, as if the walls themselves refuse to forget. Here, beauty wasn't just artistry, it was armor smuggling descent into the very mortar of power. Stepping into Shiraz's Nasir al-Mulk Mosque at dawn feels like walking into the heart of a kaleidoscope. Sunlight fractures through stained glass, painting the Persian carpets in liquid pools of ruby, sapphire, and emerald. But these shimmering patterns aren't just optical marvels. They're deliberate ciphers woven into the mosque's design by Qajar-era architects who understood light as both a physical and spiritual language. The first clue lies in the windows themselves. Each pane of colored glass is cut with geometric precision, their shapes echoing the sacred geometry of Islamic star patterns. When the rising sun strikes them at the perfect angle, the projections don't scatter randomly. They coalesce into repeating motifs, interlocking hexagons that mirror the mosque's tilework, or elongated diamond shapes that match the rhythm of prayer niches along the walls. Look closer at the projections near the mihrab, where the light forms a perfect mandala-like circle at sunrise during the spring equinox. Embedded within its rays are barely perceptible distortions, tiny ripples in the glass that bend certain wavelengths to project faint Arabic numerals onto the floor. These aren't defects, they're hidden calculations. When traced, the numbers correspond to angles used in medieval Persian astronomy, specifically the Qibla direction adjustments needed for lunar months. Some scholars argue the mosque's glasswork functioned as a celestial calculator, allowing clerics to verify prayer orientations without written tables. Then there's the color symbolism. The famed pink mosque isn't just a nickname. The dominant rose hues of its tiles and glass are a deliberate nod to Sufi mysticism, where pink represents the dawn of divine love. But the real cipher lies in the chromatic sequencing. The window's color gradients, deep violet shifting to gold, then softening into cerulean, aren't random. They follow the exact light spectrum described in 12th century Persian treatises on the colors of the soul's journey, a progression from earthly longing red to enlightenment white gold. When sunlight floods the hall, worshippers literally walk through this spectral map, their shadows interacting with the projections in ways that mirror Sufi meditation techniques. The most mesmerizing secret, though, reveals itself only in winter. On the solstice, the low-angled sunlight passes through a unique cluster of cobalt blue panes near the ceiling, projecting a pattern that seems to slither across the floor like a living thing. This serpent of light, as locals call it, aligns perfectly with a hidden inscription in the tilework, a verse from Rumi. The sun is new each day, yet it carries ancient messages. The effect lasts mere minutes before dissolving, a fleeting reminder that some codes aren't meant to be solved, only witnessed. Nasir al-Mulk's genius isn't just in its beauty, it's in its interactivity. The mosque doesn't merely display symbols, it transforms them with every passing minute, inviting worshippers to become part of the cipher. The light patterns shift with the seasons, the colors deepen or fade with atmospheric conditions, and the interplay of shadow and glass creates ephemeral verses no two visitors experience the same way. Here, architecture transcends stone and pigment to become a dialogue between earth and sky, between the hands that carved these windows 6 centuries ago and the eyes that still marvel at their secrets today. Iram Garden's towering cypress trees stand like ancient scribes, their trunks etched with markings so precise they seem to whisper secrets to those who dare to linger. These aren't mere arboreal scars, they're deliberate carvings, a botanical cipher left by generations of Persian gardeners who treated horticulture as both science and sacred art. The most prominent engraving, a spiral winding 7 times around the trunk of a 400-year-old cypress near the pavilion, defies simple explanation. Some scholars argue it's a water-level marker, documenting historical droughts, each coil representing a year of scarcity, the depth of the groove indicating severity. Others see it as a living calendar, tracking growth cycles through the tree's healing patterns. But the most tantalizing theory connects the carvings to medieval Persian gardening manuals, where specific trunk incisions were believed to alter sap flow, enhancing fragrance or fruit yield. One faded manuscript from Shiraz's Pars Museum even describes trees sung into sweetness by blade and verse, hinting that these marks might encode forgotten cultivation spells where cuts were made in rhythm with poetic meter. Then there's the poetry hidden in plain sight. On the garden's western avenue, a cluster of slender cypresses bear carvings that, when read vertically from root to crown, reveal fragments of Hafez's ghazals. The letters aren't carved deeply just enough to catch the light at dawn, when low-angled rays transform the bark into a parchment of shadow and relief. One tree near the reflecting pool spells out a cryptic couplet. The garden's heart beats beneath the blade / every scar a stanza, every root a rhyme. Locals claim this isn't vandalism but a centuries-old tradition where poets and gardeners collaborated to merge living wood with literary legacy. The practice aligns with Safavid-era accounts describing green libraries, gardens where knowledge was preserved not in books but in the very landscape. But the real marvel lies in the carving's seasonal behavior. During Noah's celebrations, visitors notice something extraordinary. Sap wells up through certain glyphs, darkening them like ink on parchment. Botanists confirm the phenomenon stems from precise vascular disruptions, but the timing feels uncanny. The most active sap flows occur along trees carved with Zoroastrian Noor as symbols, flames, sprouting seeds, and winged faravahas. Some researchers suggest the garden's designers exploited the cypress's unique biology, timing their incisions to coincide with seasonal nutrient surges. Others whisper of intentional, bleeding rituals where the trees themselves participated in rebirth ceremonies. What makes Iran's arboreal codex extraordinary is its living duality. Unlike static stone inscriptions, these carvings evolve with the trees stretching as the trunks widen, fading as bark regenerates, or sometimes vanishing entirely only to reappear decades later as the wood weathers. They're not just messages from the past, they're dialogues with time, written in a language only fully understood by sunlight, seasons, and the slow patience of roots. To walk here isn't just to visit a garden, it's to step inside an ever-growing manuscript where every tree is both author and archive. Rising from Tehran's skyline like a sentinel of stone and steel, the Azadi Tower is more than an architectural icon. It's a carefully orchestrated symphony of Persian history, its every curve whispering a coded dialogue between past and present. Built in 1971 to commemorate 2,500 years of Persian monarchy, this soaring white marble monument blends Achaemenid grandeur with Sassanian grace, but beneath its harmonious facade lies a labyrinth of nationalist symbolism waiting to be unraveled. Start with the tower's footprint, a perfect square echoing Persepolis's Apadana Palace, yet its upward sweep transforms into a parabolic arch reminiscent of Sassanian vaults. This isn't just aesthetic fusion, it's a visual manifesto asserting continuity from Cyrus the Great to the modern era. Look closer at the tilework adorning the inner vault. The turquoise mosaics shimmer with repetitive patterns that seem abstract until you notice their sequencing 8-petaled flowers alternating with 8 pointed stars. In Zoroastrian numerology, 8 symbolizes cosmic order, while in Islamic architecture, it represents the thresholds of paradise. But here, the pattern escalates to 64 repetitions, 8 squared, a deliberate nod to the year 1964 when the tower's construction was first proposed, a pivotal moment when Iran sought to redefine its identity amid Cold War tensions. The tile's color itself is telling. The specific shade of turquoise matches the pigment found in Ismail I's 16th century Safavid tiles, subtly linking the monument to Persia's last golden age before Western imperialism. Then there's the tower's most audacious cipher, its staircases. The main ascent spirals counterclockwise, defying conventional tower designs. Some historians argue this mirrors the sun's path in Zoroastrian rituals, while others note it replicates the defensive staircases of Sassanian fortresses, forcing right-handed invaders to expose their unshielded sides. The steps themselves number 291, a figure that corresponds to the gematria value of Khorramshahr in Persian script, the strategically vital city Iran would famously defend during the Iran-Iraq War. Was this prophetic foresight or retroactive myth-making? The debate fuels nationalist lore to this day, but the real genius lies in the structure's acoustics. The central dome's curvature amplifies footsteps into eerie echoes, a phenomenon architects attribute to precise marble angling. Yet during the annual Azadi celebrations, when crowds chant below, the sound waves interact with the exterior ribs to produce harmonic overtones reminiscent of the ancient choros, the ceremonial hymns of Achaemenid coronations. The effect is uncanny, a 20th century monument briefly resurrecting the soundscape of Persepolis, as if the stones themselves remember their lineage. What makes Azadi Tower truly extraordinary isn't its size or symmetry, but its duality. By day, it's a secular emblem of progress. By night, when illuminated, its shadows trace cuneiform-like patterns across the plaza, whispering older loyalties. Every element from the 23,000 marble blocks, one for each day of the Shah's reign, when inaugurated, to the underground museum's laser-aligned displays serves as both celebration and cipher. This isn't just architecture, it's ideology rendered in stone, a monument that doesn't merely commemorate history but actively argues with it, proving that even in modernity, Persia's past refuses to be silent. Towering over Tehran's skyline at 435 meters, the Milad Tower isn't just a feat of modern engineering, it's a steel and glass ode to Persia's celestial legacy, its every angle whispering ancient astronomical secrets. At first glance, the structure's sleek, needle-like silhouette seems purely contemporary, but the real marvel lies in its proportions. The tower's total height isn't arbitrary. It's a deliberate multiple of 12, echoing the 12 constellations of the Persian solar calendar. Even the observation deck's elevation, 290 meters, mirrors the average orbital period of Venus in Earth days, a nod to the planet revered in Zoroastrian cosmology as Anahita's celestial domain. Look closer at the tower's six-tiered base, each segment's width decreasing as it rises. These tiers aren't just aesthetic, they form a visual representation of the harmonic ratios described by 11th century Persian mathematician Omar Khayyam in his treatises on cubic equations. The spacing between each tier follows the Fibonacci sequence, a mathematical pattern found in classical Persian architecture, from the domes of Isfahan to the petals of Shiraz's garden roses. But the true cipher lies in the tower's crowning moment, the iconic spindle-shaped pinnacle. Its 12 steel ribs don't just support the structure, they align with key stars in the northern hemisphere as viewed from Tehran's latitude during the winter solstice, transforming the tower into a gargantuan astrolabe. Step inside the revolving restaurant near the summit, and the celestial coding continues. The floor completes a full rotation every 72 minutes, a number sacred in Persian numerology, representing the 72 martyrs of Karbala in Shia tradition and the 72-year cycle of the ancient Zoroastrian calendar. Even the restaurant's seating clusters follow the geometric principles of medieval Persian star charts, with tables arranged in concentric circles that mirror the orbits of the 5 visible planets known to pre-Islamic astronomers. The most dazzling secret, though, is etched into the tower's nighttime illumination. The LED light sequences along its facade aren't random. They pulse in rhythms matching the orbital periods of Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter when decoded using the Abjad numeral system. During the Nowruz celebrations, the lights synchronize to form the ancient Persian symbol for the vernal equinox, a fleeting tribute to the astronomical precision that guided Cyrus the Great's spring festivals. Milad Tower's genius is its dual identity, a beacon of modernity speaking the language of the ancients. Its steel ribs hum with the ghosts of Khayyam's equations. Its spotlights trace the paths of stars observed by Sassanian astrologers, and its very height is a cipher waiting to be read. This isn't just a skyscraper, it's a bridge across millennia, proving that even in the 21st century, Persian architects still build with the cosmos in mind. In the heart of Persepolis, the unfinished gate stands frozen in time, its half-carved reliefs and abandoned scaffolds whispering of ambitions cut short. Unlike the polished grandeur of the Apadana or the meticulous propaganda of the Bisotan reliefs, this gateway wears its incompleteness like an open wound. The most striking panel shows Darius the Great mid-stride, his ceremonial robe only partially chiseled from the stone, as if the sculptors dropped their tools mid-sentence. But look closer, the unfinished portions reveal something extraordinary. The underlying grid lines used to map the reliefs are still visible, etched with mathematical precision. These aren't rough sketches, they're blueprints for a cosmic vision. The spacing between the lines matches the harmonic proportions described in Achaemenid texts as the divine measure, suggesting the gate was meant to embody celestial order on earth. Then there's the mystery of the missing figures. To the gate's left, a cluster of roughly outlined shapes hints at what might have been. Scholars believe these were intended to represent the 23 subject nations of Persia, each bearing gifts like those on the Apadana stairway. But only 6 are partially formed, their features blurred as if glimpsed through fog. The most haunting is a figure with arms upraised, forever trapped between block and finished form. Some interpret this as an unfinished depiction of the Zoroastrian Yazata Mithra, frozen mid-gesture of blessing. Was this interruption an omen? The gate's abandonment coincides with Darius's disastrous Greek campaigns, hinting that the empire's reach had finally exceeded its grasp. The real cipher, however, may lie in the gate's orientation. Unlike Persepolis's completed structures, which align with solstice sunrises, the unfinished gate faces true north with eerie precision, a direction associated in Zoroastrian cosmology with the throne of Ahura Mazda. Infrared scans revealed something astonishing beneath the surface: faint traces of gold leaf in the uncarved sections, arranged in patterns matching the constellation Draco as it appeared in 500 BC. Was this meant to be a stellar map anchoring Persepolis to the heavens, or perhaps a safeguard left incomplete when Darius's scribes realized the stars themselves were shifting, their celestial order slipping from Persian control? Even the stone whispers secrets. The limestone used here differs from the surrounding structures quarried from a region near modern-day Isfahan. Its veins contain microscopic fossilized sea creatures. To the Achaemenids, who revered water as a sacred element, this wasn't just building material, it was a relic of the primordial ocean from which creation emerged. The unfinished gate, then, becomes more than a construction halt. It's a frozen moment between ambition and dissolution, between the earthly and the divine. The chisel mark still gleams sharp after 2.5 millennia, as if the masons might return tomorrow to continue their work. Perhaps that was the point, not to showcase what Persia achieved, but to remind us of what it dared to dream. Rising like sentinels from the dusty plains of Kazvin, the twin Karakan towers stand as silent mathematicians of the Seljuk era, their every brick a carefully placed variable in an equation carved in clay. Built just 17 years apart in the 11th century, these octagonal tombs appear identical at a glance, but their subtle divergences reveal a staggering depth of intention. The lower tower's brickwork follows a precise alternating pattern, one row laid horizontally, the next vertically, creating a rhythmic texture that pulses across the surface like a heartbeat. But this isn't mere decoration. Count the bricks in any vertical column, and you'll find exactly 24 per segment, a number mirroring the hours in a day, suggesting the builders encoded temporal cycles into the masonry itself. Then there's the geometric cipher hidden in the octagons. Each tower's 8 facets aren't just structural, they form a 3-dimensional abacus. The angle between adjoining facets measures precisely 135 degrees, a value that, when multiplied by the tower's 8 sides, completes the circle with 1080 degrees, the sacred number of completion in Persian cosmology. Even more astonishing is how the brick patterns shift near the summit. The upper tower introduces a diagonal herringbone design only on its northern faces, a possible nod to the Qibla direction, or perhaps a solar marker, as these facets catch the first and last light during the summer solstice. But the real revelation lies in what isn't immediately visible. Infrared scans reveal hollow chambers within the walls where bricks are arranged in concentric spirals. These aren't mere gaps for stability. The number of revolutions matches the Fibonacci sequence found in Seljuk manuscripts on harmonic proportions. Some researchers argue the voids functioned as resonance chambers, tuned to amplify specific frequencies during windstorms, a literal architecture of sound. The tower's crowning enigma, though, is their celestial alignment. Though separated by centuries, their central axes point toward Polaris as it appeared in their respective construction years, accounting for millennia of axial precession. This isn't just orientation, it's a time capsule in brick, a way to freeze the night sky's pivot in perpetuity. Every element whispers of a lost architectural language where mathematics, music, and the cosmos were inseparable. The Karakan towers don't just commemorate the dead, they immortalize the infinite, proving that even in stillness, brick and mortar can speak volumes. Perched high in the rugged peaks of northwestern Iran, the crumbling walls of Babak Fort whisper tales of rebellion, each stone bearing the scars of a 9-year uprising against the Abbasid Caliphate. At first glance, the fortress appears as a jumble of weathered masonry, but look closer and you'll discover a network of deliberate scratches and grooves etched into the rocks. These aren't accidental marks from sieges or erosion, they're the clandestine code of Babak Khorramdin, the legendary Karamite leader who turned this mountain stronghold into a headquarters for revolution. The most visible symbols cluster near strategic points, arrow slits, water cisterns, and hidden passages. A series of parallel lines scored into the limestone beside the eastern gate, for example, correspond to lunar phases documented in medieval Persian texts, suggesting Babak's rebels timed their raids under cover of darkness during moonless nights. One particularly provocative carving near the armory depicts a stylized flame inside a circle, a signature Karamite symbol representing their dualist belief in the cosmic struggle between light and oppression. But the real cipher lies in the variations. Some flames have 3 tongues instead of the usual 2, while others are bisected by a single vertical line. Scholars cross-referencing these with 9th century accounts believe they functioned as tactical shorthand. 3 flames signaled a call to arms, while a bisected flame marked a fallback position. Even the fortress's layout seems to encode messages. The spacing between watchtowers follows a precise ratio, each positioned exactly 1,200 Persian cubits apart, a number sacred to the Karamites as it represented the 12 imams they revered. The most ingenious system, however, is found in the water channels. Carved into the bottoms of these life-sustaining aqueducts are shallow glyphs only visible when the channels run dry. Some resemble mountain peaks, others zigzagging paths. Local shepherds long dismissed them as idle doodles until a team of archaeologists noticed their alignment with distant landmarks. The peaks match the contours of surrounding valleys, likely escape routes, while the zigzags trace underground springs still used by nomads today. Babak didn't just build a fortress, he engineered a living map, ensuring his followers could navigate the terrain even if captured or separated. But the stones guard darker secrets too. Near the commander's quarters, a cluster of carvings shows a sequence of stick-figure prisoners with progressively missing limbs. Initially mistaken for barbaric trophy art, researchers now believe these were grim tallies of Abbasid reprisals, each mutilation corresponding to specific caliphate edicts against rebels. The final figure in the sequence, a headless torso, aligns with historical records of Babak's own brutal execution in 838. Yet even in defeat, his cipher endured. The fort's walls still hum with the echoes of resistance, a testament to the power of symbols etched in stone by hands that refused to be silenced. Scattered across the windswept hills of Marrakech lie the shattered remains of what was once the medieval world's most advanced astronomical hub, the Ilkhanid Observatory. Built under the patronage of Hulagu Khan and directed by the polymath Nasir al-Din Tusi, this 13th century marvel didn't just track celestial movements, it may have encoded them into the very tiles beneath the astronomer's feet. Among the rubble, archaeologists have unearthed glazed ceramic fragments unlike any other Seljuk or Ilkhanid decorative work. Their surfaces etched with sequences of dots, intersecting lines, and minute glyphs that resemble nothing so much as a cosmic ledger. At first dismissed as ornamental flourishes, these patterns now reveal a startling possibility. They could be fragments of a gargantuan star catalogue, a tactile archive of the heavens painstakingly transcribed into clay. One particularly compelling shard, now housed in the Tabriz Museum, displays a grid of 24 precise indentations arranged in 3 rows. When overlaid with known celestial coordinates from Tusi's Zij-i-Ilkhani, the dots align with the positions of stars in the Auriga constellation as observed in 1267. Even more intriguing are the tile edges, some bear tiny, raised nubs that seem random until mapped 3-dimensionally. Researchers now believe these protrusions corresponded to auxiliary instruments mounted on the observatory's walls, their placement allowing astronomers to physically slide tiles into alignment like an analog computer. Imagine a scholar 7 centuries ago adjusting ceramic plates to predict lunar eclipses or planetary conjunctions, their fingertips tracing the same grooves we're only now learning to read. The observatory's layout suggests even grander encryption. Excavations reveal that the surviving tile clusters are concentrated along the building's eastern arc, precisely where Tusi's team recorded the rising of significant stars. Some fragments retain traces of colored glaze in unusual combinations, cobalt blue paired with metallic silver or turquoise streaked with iron red. Spectroscopy confirms these pigments match medieval descriptions of celestial inks used in Ilkhanid manuscripts to denote stellar magnitudes. A half-preserved 6-pointed star tile, for example, might not represent the Star of David but the then recently documented supernova in the Crab Nebula, its fading brilliance captured in the deliberate dulling of its glaze over successive firings. But the real cipher lies beneath the tiles. Infrared scans of the observatory's foundations exposed a network of shallow channels radiating outward from the central viewing platform. These grooves, when filled with water or mercury as described in contemporary accounts, would have reflected starlight onto the tiled walls, projecting ephemeral constellations that changed with the seasons. The tiles' patterns then weren't standalone records, they were reference points for this liquid planetarium, their markings aligning with specific reflections to create an interactive sky map. A 13th-century astronomer could stand at the heart of this mechanism, surrounded by shimmering celestial reflections and their ceramic counterparts, decoding the universe in real time. Marrakech's genius wasn't just in observing the cosmos, but in merging calculation and artistry to make the heavens legible. Those broken tiles, they're not debris, they're pages from a monumental atlas, one that fused the precision of science with the poetry of craftsmanship. As we piece together these fragments, we're not just restoring an observatory. We're learning to read a language where astronomy and architecture became one, where every glazed line was a bridge between Earth and stars. Hidden beneath the vivid tragedy of Ashura depicted on the walls of Kermanshah's Taqi Maivan al-Mulk lies a daring act of political dissent, painted in the symbolic language of the oppressed. At first glance, these Qajar-era murals appear to follow traditional Shiite iconography, mourners clad in black, Imam Hussein's martyrdom at Karbala, the ominous silhouettes of Umayyad soldiers. But peer closer, and the allegory unravels into something far more subversive. The faces of Hussein's adversaries are rendered with exaggerated, almost caricatured features, broad noses, sunken eyes, and uniforms suspiciously reminiscent of British colonial officers' garb. This isn't just artistic license, it's a calculated risk. The early 20th century saw Persia carved into spheres of influence by European powers, and the artists of Maivan al-Mulk responded by turning sacred history into a protest manifesto. Consider the mural where Hussein's half-brother Abbas reaches for water at the Euphrates. The river's ripples form uncanny patterns, not random brushstrokes, but subtle repetitions of the Union Jack's intersecting line. Even the water vessels carried by Abbas's companions mimic the shapes of Persian oil derricks, a none too subtle jab at British exploitation of Iran's resources. The artists took advantage of a cultural loophole. Colonial officials rarely scrutinized religious art, assuming it to be apolitical, but for locals the message was unmistakable. When a Persian villager saw the painted Umayyad soldier clutching a musket with East India Company markings, they didn't just witness a historical scene, they saw their own struggle reflected back at them. The palette itself becomes a cipher. Traditional Ashura murals emphasize crimson for martyrdom and black for mourning, but here, splashes of indigo and ochre dominate the background, colors historically associated with Qajar resistance to the Anglo-Russian Convention of 1907. One particularly audacious panel depicts the horse of Hussein's antagonist Shimmer with a saddle blanket patterned like the Russian imperial flag. Such details didn't merely critique foreign powers, they weaponized collective memory. By aligning contemporary oppressors with Islam's archetypal villains, the murals framed resistance as a sacred duty. Most ingenious is the spatial coding. Scenes condemning British interference cluster near the Takiyeh's entrance, while Russian symbolism appears along the Western Wall, a literal mapping of geopolitical threats onto sacred architecture. Even the placement of mourners holds meaning. Their tear-streaked faces are often positioned at eye level with viewers, creating an intimate call to empathy that transcends centuries. These murals weren't just art, they were a clandestine language of survival. When colonial censors passed through, they saw devotional imagery. But for those who knew how to look, every brushstroke whispered rebellion, turning the Takiyeh into both sanctuary and school for dissent. The paint may fade, but its defiance remains proof that sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin not with swords, but with pigments and careful, coded strokes. Spanning the Zayandeh River with elegant grandeur, Isfahan's Si-Ose Pol, the Bridge of 33 Arches, is far more than a feat of Safavid engineering. Its imposing stone structure hums with secrets, particularly in the way sound dances across its arches when the river swells beneath them. The lower arches, partially submerged during high water, transform into natural resonance chambers. When the current rushes through, the vibrations create eerie harmonics, tones that bounce off the brickwork in cascading echoes. Locals have long claimed these sounds carry coded rhythms, especially at dusk when the acoustics sharpen. Some swear they've heard the distant cadence of marching soldiers, while others insist the bridge whispers verses from Hafez's poetry. The carvings along the parapets deepen the mystery. Floral motifs intertwine with geometric patterns, but look closely and you'll notice irregularities. Certain petals are elongated, their stems bending at precise angles. Researchers have mapped these anomalies and found they correspond to musical intervals in traditional Persian dastgah scales. When traced in sequence, the patterns outline a melody that, when played on a santur or ney, mimics the bridge's natural harmonics. Was this intentional? The bridge's architect, Alavadi Khan, was a patron of the arts who fused mathematics with aesthetics. His artisans may have encoded harmonies into the stone, knowing the river would one day play them. Even the arches themselves are a cipher. Though the bridge's name highlights 33 arches, the true count is 36 when including the smaller, hidden supports beneath the walkway. This discrepancy isn't an oversight, it mirrors the 33 vertebrae of the human spine in Sufi mysticism, with the 3 submerged arches representing the unseen spiritual centers. The alignment supports this. At noon during the summer solstice, sunlight filters through the arches to cast 33 distinct shadows on the water's surface, while the remaining 3 linger in darkness. The most compelling evidence of the bridge's hidden language lies in its foundations. Recent sonar scans revealed hollow chambers within the piers, their walls lined with grooves that spiral like conch shells. These aren't structural flaws, they're sound channels engineered to amplify specific frequencies when water rushes past. During spring floods, the chambers produce a low-frequency hum detectable only with specialized equipment, a tone that matches the resonant frequency of human brainwaves associated with deep meditation. Coincidence, or was C.O. St. Paul designed as more than a crossing, but as a portal to contemplation, its stones vibrating with frequencies meant to still the mind and awaken the soul? From its mathematical precision to its symphonic stones, the bridge refuses to be just a relic. It's a living instrument, a puzzle carved in brick and water, proving that in Isfahan, even the rivers speak in verse. Kashan's Persian house isn't just a masterpiece of Qajar-era architecture, it's a symphony of hidden messages, where even the breeze carries coded whispers. At the heart of this opulent merchant's residence stands its towering wind catcher, a lattice of clay and timber that does far more than channel cool air. Look closely at its vents, and you'll notice their intricate latticework isn't uniform. The gaps between the wooden slats vary in width, creating patterns that local law insists are anything but random. Some scholars argue these intervals correspond to the meter of classical Persian poetry, transforming the structure into a colossal wind harp tuned to recite verses when the desert gusts blow just right. Others point to the recurring motif of 8 pointed stars carved into the vents, a number sacred in both Islamic geometry and Zoroastrian cosmology, suggesting the wind catcher wasn't just functional but a bridge between worlds. Inside, the whispers grow louder. The walls of the central courtyard are adorned with frescoes that appear, at first glance, to depict typical floral scenes: roses, lilies, and vines intertwined. But step back, and the patterns reveal a startling precision. Certain petals are elongated unnaturally, their stems bending to form the elegant curves of Persian script. Under raking light, these floral calligraphies emerge as fragments of love poetry, possibly composed by the house's original owner for his bride. One panel near the women's quarters shows a nightingale mid-song, its open beak framing a tiny, barely visible couplet. The wind carries what the walls dare not say. The real cipher, though, lies in the wind catcher's acoustics. The shafts leading down from the tower don't simply funnel air, they are engineered to amplify specific frequencies. Stand in the alcove beneath the main vent during the hot afternoon winds, and the rushing air resonates with a low hum that morphs into discernible tones. Acoustic analysis reveals these frequencies match the traditional avaz scales used in Kashan's folk music, suggesting the architects designed the structure to sing cultural melodies. Some historians believe this was a covert way to preserve local musical traditions during periods of cultural suppression, turning the house itself into a clandestine repository of sound. But the most tantalizing secret might be hidden in plain sight: the wind catcher's shadow. At midday during the summer solstice, the structure casts a silhouette that stretches across the courtyard, its lattice pattern projecting onto a specific fresco of a cypress tree. The shadow's lines intersect with painted branches to form a perfect botte motif, the iconic Persian paisley symbolizing eternal life. This isn't just artistry, it's celestial choreography, a way to mark time and affirm destiny through architecture. Every element, from the whisper of the vents to the poetry in the plaster, conspires to prove that in Persian house, even the wind is in on the secret. To walk these halls isn't just to admire Qajar craftsmanship, it's to witness a dialogue between earth and sky, between the spoken and the unspoken. The house doesn't just shelter its inhabitants, it speaks for them, encoding their loves, fears, and hopes into the very fabric of clay and breeze. And if you listen closely on a quiet afternoon, you might just hear the wind catcher sighing its centuries-old confessions to anyone patient enough to decipher them. Sunlight filters through the intricate wooden lattices of Naranjistan-e Kavam's windows, casting geometric shadows that dance across the courtyard like a silent language waiting to be deciphered. At first glance, these delicate screens known as orosi appear purely decorative, their interlocking stars and hexagons a testament to Persian woodworking mastery. But look closer and the patterns reveal something far more deliberate. Each intersection, each carefully calculated gap between the slats forms a visual cipher, one that scholars believe conceals everything from Sufi meditation guides to covert critiques of the Qajar dynasty's excesses. Take the recurring 8-pointed star motif, a hallmark of Islamic sacred geometry. While commonly associated with cosmic order, the stars here twist into unconventional variations, some elongated, others compressed, their angles deviating from mathematical perfection. One theory suggests these distortions encode numerical sequences linked to Sufi dhikr practices, where repetitive chanting aligns breath with divine remembrance. The number of intersections in certain clusters, 99, for example, mirrors the traditional count of Allah's names in Islam, hinting that the lattices functioned as mnemonic devices for silent prayer. But the real intrigue lies in the windows facing the garden's northern wall. Here, the patterns grow asymmetrical, their designs disrupting the harmony of the rest. Hidden within these flaws are shapes resembling clenched fists and broken chains, symbols associated with underground resistance movements during the late Qajar era. A particularly provocative panel near the pavilion's entrance frames a series of interconnected diamonds that, when viewed at dawn, cast shadows forming the Chinese letter of a gallows. Was this a daring artist's commentary on the regime's brutality? The house's owner, Mohammed Ali Khan Kavam ol-Mulk, was a merchant governor who walked a fine line between loyalty and dissent, and some historians argue these lattices served as his silent protest. The genius of the encryption lies in its deniability. To the untrained eye, the lattices were simply beautiful, but to initiates, the irregularities whispered subversion. One window's central star, for instance, contains exactly 19 inner facets, a number sacred to Babism, a persecuted religious movement. Another's geometry aligns with the Pleiades during the autumn equinox, a celestial nod to Zoroastrian influences Qajar orthodoxy sought to suppress. Even the wood itself tells a story. Microscopic analysis reveals carvings along the edges of some slats, tiny, barely visible script praising the martyred poet Farrokhzad, whose works were banned for their feminist themes. What makes Naranjastan's lattices extraordinary isn't just their artistry, but their duality. By day, they filter light into poetry. By night, candlelight transforms them into flickering tablets of hidden knowledge. The house doesn't just shelter its secrets, it breathes them, one geometric sigh at a time, proving that in Qajar Persia, even the air between the slats could carry rebellion. Shah Mosque's famed courtyard dazzles with its kaleidoscope of turquoise tiles, but linger a moment longer, and the patterns begin to shift, revealing words within words, verses coiled inside verses. This isn't just calligraphy, it's a labyrinth of sacred text where every curve and flourish conceals layers of meaning visible only to those who know how to look. The mosque's artisans employed a technique called saya mashq, overlapping scripts so masterfully that a single tile might bear 3 different Quranic passages, each legible from a different vantage point. Stand directly before the mihrab, and the bold Thuluth script proclaims Surah al-Fatiha. Step left, and the same lines refract into Surah al-Ikhlas's declaration of divine unity. From the right, the strokes rearrange into verses from Surah al-Nur about the light upon light of spiritual guidance, a visual metaphor for the mosque's own layered wisdom. The real marvel lies in the mosque's hidden syllables, tiny glyphs tucked between primary letters, often overlooked as decorative flourishes. On the eastern arch, for instance, the word Allah stretches across 10 tiles, but nestled within its elongated lam are microscopic repetitions of the 99 names, each no larger than a grain of rice. Some scholars argue these micro-inscriptions functioned as meditative focal points, their near invisibility demanding the kind of patient contemplation Sufi mystics prized. Others believe they served a cryptographic purpose. When read in sequence from specific prayer niches, they form an alternate hadith chain tracing back to Imam Ali's esoteric teachings. Then there's the courtyard's central star motif. From ground level, the 8-pointed design appears purely geometric, but climbed to the gallery as restoration teams did in 2019, and the perspective shifts. The intersecting tiles reveal a radial pattern of basmala phrases, their letters stretched and warped to follow the star's contours. This wasn't just artistry, it was theological calculus. The phrases rotate outward like rays, each iteration slightly altered to reflect a different attribute of the divine: mercy facing the Qibla, justice oriented toward the judiciary courtyard, wisdom angled toward the madrasa. Even the tile's glaze plays its part. High lead content in certain letters causes them to shimmer differently at dawn and dusk, subtly highlighting specific words during morning and evening prayers. But the most profound cipher might be the one nobody was meant to read. Beneath the courtyard's north fountain, archaeologists discovered a buried layer of tiles inscribed with mirror writing, backward Quranic verses visible only in reflection. Some say these were meant for the angels, who tradition holds recite scripture in reverse. Others whisper they encode a Sufi meditation on divine unity, where truth becomes clearest when viewed indirectly. The Shah Mosque doesn't just display scripture, it interrogates it, asking every visitor, how many ways can the divine be seen? The answer, it seems, is written in the walls, if you know where to stand. Beneath the tranquil beauty of Kashan's Fin Garden, where orange blossoms perfume the air and cypress trees stand like silent sentinels, flows a hidden language, one written not in ink but in water. The garden's famed hydraulic system, a marvel of Safavid engineering, does more than nourish its lush terraces. From ground level, the network of narrow channels and bubbling fountains appears purely functional, but ascend to the garden's elevated pavilions and the truth reveals itself. The waterways coil and intersect to form elegant Persian calligraphy, their curves spelling out poetry and proverbs when viewed from above. One particularly intricate arrangement near the central pavilion traces the words Arabic Alif, Mamdud, Arabic, Ba Arabic Zain, Arabic Noon, Arabic Dal, Arabic Gaf, Arabic Farsi, Ya Arabic Alif, Arabic Sin, Arabic Ta. Water is life, its letters shimmering into clarity as sunlight dances across the surface. The genius of this aquatic cipher lies in its dual purpose. Each channel's width and depth were calculated not just for irrigation, but to control the speed and reflectivity of the water, ensuring the script remains legible under specific lighting conditions. During the summer solstice, when the sun hangs directly overhead, the shadows of overhanging plane trees fall across the channels, accentuating certain strokes like a calligrapher's deliberate flourishes. Even the sound of the water plays its part. The channels narrow at precise intervals, creating rhythmic gurgles that local lore claims match the meter of the hidden verses. Some historians argue the system was designed to recite poetry audibly when the garden was silent, turning hydraulics into a kind of liquid lyre. But the true mastery lies in the crypts beneath the garden. A series of subterranean conduits, accessible only through hidden grates, feed the surface channels with water from a natural spring. These tunnels are lined with glazed bricks, their surfaces incised with faint geometric patterns. When illuminated by torchlight, the reflections ripple across the water's surface, projecting secondary layers of text, often snippets of Rumi's verses about renewal and flow. One tunnel, sealed for centuries until its rediscovery in 2012, contains a startling feature: a vertical shaft where water cascades down stepped niches, each carved with a single letter. As the drops strike these stones, their splashes align to form fleeting words in the damp patches left behind, a transient scripture that appears and vanishes like a whispered secret. Finn Garden's water crypts are more than engineering. They're a meditation on impermanence and artistry. The messages written in liquid are never static. They shift with the light, the season, even the angle of the viewer's gaze. To walk here is to witness a paradox, words meant to endure, carved in the most ephemeral medium of all. The garden's builders understood that some truths are best revealed not in stone, but in the endless dance of reflection and flow, where meaning surfaces only for those patient enough to look beyond the surface. Rising from the arid plains of Hamadan, the cubical tomb of Avicenna, Persia's legendary polymath, holds more than the physician's remains. Its stark geometry whispers of a mind that saw the universe as both body and cipher, where anatomy and astronomy intertwined. At first glance, the structure's clean lines and sparse inscriptions appear disarmingly simple, but the real intrigue lies in what's omitted. The eastern facade bears Avicenna's famous maxim: "The world is divided into men who have brains and no religion, and men who have religion and no brains." Yet the quote is deliberately truncated, its missing half concealed in the mortar gaps between bricks, a tactile puzzle only revealed by tracing the joints with fingertips. Inside the mausoleum, the walls unfold like pages from Avicenna's lost manuscripts. The 12 columns supporting the dome aren't merely structural, they correspond to the 12 cranial nerves he mapped in his canon of medicine, each capital carved with microscopic neural pathways. The dome's interior, painted midnight blue with gold stars, replicates the night sky as it appeared on Avicenna's death in 1037, but with 3 constellations displaced. These errors align with his controversial diagrams of the soul's ascent through celestial spheres, a theory Sufis later encoded into poetry. The true cipher, however, lies beneath the tomb. Recently uncovered substructures reveal a hidden chamber where the walls are lined with glazed tiles depicting intertwined human organs and planetary symbols. A kidney entwined with Saturn, a heart pulsating beside Mars, these aren't decorative whimsy. Cross-referenced with Avicenna's encrypted notes on astral medicine, they form a diagnostic chart. Certain celestial alignments, when projected through the tomb's oculus, illuminate specific organs, suggesting optimal treatment times. Most haunting is the cenotaph's base, inscribed with a grid of numbers resembling a chessboard. Modern cryptographers recognize it as a magic square, a mathematical puzzle where rows and columns sum to the same value. But this one defies convention. Its center holds the number 1024, Avicenna's calculated number of human veins. Solve the square, and the numerals rearrange into coordinates pointing to Mount Alban slopes, where locals claim his final manuscript, the Emerald Tablet of Physiology, was buried to keep medicine safe from those who would weaponize it. Avicenna's tomb isn't just a memorial, it's a working model of his mind where every angle and inscription bridges the tangible and the transcendent. To stand here is to stand inside an anatomical atlas, a star chart, and a philosopher's manifesto, all folded into stone. The cube's simplicity is a decoy. Its secrets, like the man himself, demand you look twice. Deep in the ruins of ancient Susa, the Apadana Palace's crumbling walls still shimmer with fragments of something extraordinary, thousands of glazed bricks, their vibrant blues and golds arranged in patterns far too deliberate to dismiss as mere decoration. At first glance, these tiles appear to depict royal processions and mythological beasts, standard fare for Persian imperial art. But look closer. The way certain bricks cluster in groups of 12, or how the borders zigzag with mathematical precision, and you'll realize these aren't just scenes of splendor. They're a silent ledger, a coded archive of Elamite trade agreements and sacred tales, pressed into clay and fired for eternity. Take the most famous surviving panel, a procession of gift-bearing delegates, their robes rendered in lapis blue glaze. The figures are spaced at irregular intervals, some closer, others farther apart. Historians once assumed this was artistic license until researchers noticed the gaps correspond exactly to the travel times between Susa and the delegates' homelands, 5 bricks apart for the Medes, a 5-day journey, 9 for the Babylonians. The bricks aren't just depicting tribute, they're mapping the empire's logistical backbone, turning art into a geopolitical atlas. Even the colors hold meaning. The Elamites associated specific hues with contractual terms: turquoise for permanent alliances, ochre for renewable trade pacts, a cluster of emerald green bricks near the panel's edge. That's the exact shade used in Elamite legal tablets to denote exemptions for grain tariffs. Then there's the mythical menagerie. Between the tribute scenes, creatures like winged lions and serpent-tailed scorpions slither across the tiles. At face value, they're symbols of royal power, but their positions tell another story. One section shows a griffin poised mid-leap, its talons gripping a brick stamped with tiny cuneiform dots, barely visible unless you're inches away. These dots form numerals, a system Elamite merchants used to record commodity prices. The griffin, it turns out, isn't just a guardian figure. It's hovering over the price of cedar wood imports from Lebanon, its wingspan matching the number of silver shekels per log. But the Apadana's boldest cipher hides in plain sight. The brick patterns themselves. Certain walls feature diamond-shaped arrays where the glaze subtly shifts in reflectance. Under infrared light, these diamonds resolve into cuneiform glyphs, contract clauses pressed into the clay before firing, then concealed under layers of glaze. One such panel, painstakingly reconstructed from fragments, reveals a treaty with the Indus Valley civilization, specifying exchange rates for lapis lazuli and cotton. The real stroke of genius, the text is mirrored, readable only when sunlight strikes at a 23-degree angle, likely a safeguard against prying eyes, ensuring only initiated scribes could decode the terms. What makes Susa's glazed bricks extraordinary isn't just their beauty or craftsmanship, it's their duality. Every lion, every merchant, every zigzagging border was both art and accounting, myth and memorandum. The Apadana's walls didn't just celebrate empire, they administered it, whispering secrets to those who knew how to look. And if you stand there at dusk, when the low light catches the glaze just right, you can almost hear the clink of silver and the rustle of papyrus contracts, echoing through millennia in the language of baked earth and mineral pigments. On a windswept plateau in western Iran, the scattered ruins of Kangavar Temple rise like a puzzle waiting to be solved, each weathered column and fractured frieze whispering of a lost water cult that once thrived here. Unlike Persia's more intact monuments, Kangavar's disarray is part of its intrigue. The temple's columns aren't merely fallen, they're deliberately spaced in a radial pattern that, when mapped, mirrors the tributaries of the nearby Gama's Ab River. This isn't haphazard collapse, it's hydrology encoded in stone. Archaeologists have long debated whether this was a temple to Anahita, the Zoroastrian goddess of waters, but the real proof lies in the carvings that still cling to the broken plinths. Faded reliefs show processions of women carrying overflowing pitchers, their postures identical to descriptions in Avestan hymns of Anahita's priestesses performing the Aba Riz ritual, where sacred waters were poured to purify kings. Look closer at the column bases, and you'll notice something peculiar: shallow channels carved into their surfaces, zigzagging like miniature riverbeds. When reconstructed digitally, these grooves align into a network that would have directed water from the temple's central altar outward to each column, creating a liquid mandala during ceremonies. The most compelling evidence, though, is hidden in plain sight. One partially intact capital depicts a lotus flower encircled by 9 fish, an exact match for the iconography of Anahita's temple at Istakhr, described in Sassanian text. The fish aren't just decorative, their scales are incised with microglyphs resembling cuneiform numerals, possibly tallying offerings or lunar cycles tied to flood seasons. The temple's layout deepens the mystery. Excavations reveal subterranean chambers lined with waterproof bitumen, their walls punctuated by narrow slits. During spring rains, these tunnels would have channeled runoff into a central cistern, amplifying the sound of rushing water through the temple's hollow columns, an auditory illusion of being inside a roaring cascade. Some scholars believe the entire structure functioned as a giant hydraulic instrument, its vibrations tuned to specific frequencies mentioned in Zoroastrian purification rites. Even the ruins' alignment feels intentional. At dawn during the summer solstice, the shadow of the tallest standing column stretches to touch a distant mountain peak where natural springs emerge, as if the temple were pointing to Anahita's hidden sources. What makes Kangavar extraordinary isn't just its connection to the water goddess, but how it turns architecture into a living ritual. Every stone seems to respond to the elements, collecting rain, echoing storms, and marking celestial events tied to water's cyclical return. The temple may be in ruins, but its message remains fluid, urging us to listen not just with our eyes, but with the same reverence for whispers and currents that its builders once did. Perched on the jagged slopes of Mount Alvand, the crumbling walls of Zahak Castle whisper tales of fire-breathing tyrants and serpent-armed kings. But look beyond the legend, and you'll find the stones themselves telling a far darker story. The castle's most infamous relief, a weathered carving of a dragon-like figure coiled around a human form, isn't just a nod to the mythical Zahak of Persian epic. Run your fingers along its chiseled scales, and you'll feel something startling: precise notches marking each serpentine curve, a tactile code echoing ancient Assyrian accounting systems. Scholars now believe these grooves tally real historical tributes: livestock, grain, even prisoners, extorted by the castle's actual ruler, a little-known Median satrap who modeled his reign on the monstrous king of legend. The dragon's posture holds another secret. Its tail loops in 3 deliberate spirals before constricting around the human figure, a pattern matching celestial events recorded in Babylonian clay tablets. During the summer solstice of 612 BC, the same year the Medes overthrew Assyrian rule, the shadow of the castle's lone remaining tower bisects the carving at dawn, illuminating 3 specific scales. These correspond to cuneiform numerals pressed into clay receipts found nearby, listing quantities of bronze weapons smuggled into the fortress. Was the dragon not just a mythic warning, but a ledger of rebellion? Then there's the castle's most overlooked detail, the so-called weeping walls. Sections of the western ramparts bear strange, vein-like erosion patterns streaming downward. Local lore claims these are the tears of Zahak's victims, but mineral analysis reveals something more cunning. The grooves are man-made, designed to channel rainwater into hidden cisterns. Follow their path, and you'll discover faint carvings of fish swimming against the current, a symbol of resistance used by the Median priestly caste. One such fish, tucked behind a collapsed archway, has its gills carved in the shape of the Zoroastrian Faravahar, suggesting the fortress harbored dissenters who clung to the old faith under tyrannical rule. But the true cipher lies in the castle's acoustics. Certain corridors amplify whispers into eerie echoes that seem to emanate from the walls themselves. Stand in the narrow stairwell leading to the dungeon, and your breath creates a low-frequency hum matching the vibrational pitch described in Avestan hymns to slay demons. Coincidence, or was Zahak Castle designed not just to imprison bodies, but to trap the echoes of rebellion, turning stone into a resonator for defiance? The castle's last secret might be its most poetic. Beneath the dragon relief, almost erased by time, a single word is scratched in Proto-Persian, Azadi. Freedom not carved by a king's decree, but by some long-forgotten hand that refused to let the stones forget. The myth says Zahak's serpents fed on human brains. The stones whisper another truth, that even under tyranny, minds remained unconquered. On the sun-scorched island of Keshem, the jagged spires of Stars Valley rise like petrified lightning, twisted by millennia of wind and water into shapes so uncanny they defy earthly explanation. Locals call this place Sanjistan-e-Eshk, the Valley of Love, but its labyrinth of knife-edged ravines and gravity-defying pillars holds whispers of something far older than romance. Walk these canyons at dusk when the fading light stretches shadows into alien scripts across the rocks, and you'll understand why legends insist these formations weren't carved by erosion alone. The patterns are too precise, spirals that mirror Fibonacci sequences, archways aligning with solstice sunrises, and towering monoliths whose angles reflect the exact declination of Sirius as it would have appeared over the Persian Gulf 4,000 years ago. One of the most striking formations, dubbed the Celestial Throne, features a seat-like depression flanked by two weathered obelisks. Geological surveys confirm the rocks are sedimentary, yet their positioning suggests deliberate placement. From the throne, the obelisks frame the winter solstice sunset, while fissures in the surrounding walls cast dagger-like shadows that point to key stars in the Orion constellation. Elders from Keshum's indigenous Bandari community recount stories of Ryakan, celestial beings who descended to etch star maps into the valley's stones as guidance for future seers. Modern geologists dismiss this as poetic fancy, but even they can't explain why certain erosion patterns repeat in mathematically significant clusters, like the 17 parallel grooves near the valley's heart, a number sacred in Zoroastrian cosmology as the count of primordial elements. Then there's the Whispering Gallery, a narrow gorge where wind funnels through flute-like holes in the rock face, producing tones that shift with the lunar cycle. During a full moon, the vibrations coalesce into a near-musical scale, echoing the intervals described in medieval Persian treatises on planetary harmonics. Recent studies found the holes aren't random. Their diameters correspond to ratios used in ancient Persian astronomy to calculate planetary orbits. Could this be coincidence or evidence of a lost acoustic science? Local mystics still perform moonlit rituals here, chanting verses they claim were revealed by the rocks themselves, their voices blending with the valley's otherworldly hum. The valley's most perplexing feature, though, lies hidden in plain sight. Certain boulders bear faint, net-like carvings too symmetrical for natural weathering. Under ultraviolet light, these grids fluoresce with traces of mineral deposits not native to Keshum, suggesting they were once painted with pigments possibly derived from crushed meteoric iron. One such boulder, when struck with a mallet, emits a resonant frequency matching the Schumann resonance, the Earth's natural electromagnetic pulse. To the ancients, this might have signaled a conduit between Earth and sky, a literal tuning fork for cosmic communication. Stars Valley doesn't just challenge our understanding of erosion, it blurs the line between geology and glyph. Every razor-edged canyon wall, every echoing wind tunnel, feels like a page from a celestial manuscript, one written not in ink but in the slow, patient hand of elemental forces. Whether shaped by stellar messengers or the artistry of time, the valley stones remain silent sentinels of a truth we're only beginning to decipher, that the cosmos might speak not just through light but through the very bones of the earth. Tehran's Goldston Palace seems to glitter from every angle, its Qajar-era mosaics and gold-leafed arches designed to dazzle visitors into submission. But step into the Hall of Mirrors and the opulence takes on a sharper edge. This isn't just a chamber of reflections, it's a hall of whispers where the very glass bends reality to conceal subversion. The mirrors here aren't flawlessly flat, they're subtly warped, their surfaces rippling like disturbed water. At first, the distortions seem accidental, the result of 19th-century glass-blowing imperfections. But stand at the precise midpoint of the room where Nasir al-Din Shah once held private audiences, and the fragments of reflection coalesce into something startling. The fragmented faces of European diplomats, their features grotesquely exaggerated bulbous noses, sunken eyes, crowns slipping askew. This wasn't mere artistic whimsy. The Qajar court, pressured by colonial powers, turned the hall into a veiled act of defiance. The mirror's distortions follow a deliberate pattern. British envoys, whose demands for tobacco concessions sparked riots, appear with elongated necks like grasping vultures. Russian officers who seized Persian territory loom with bloated torsos and tiny, clenched fists. Even the ceiling's central chandelier plays its part. Its prismatic crystals refract light to cast jagged shadows that, at midday, trace the borders of lands lost to foreign treaties across the palace walls. The true genius lies in the mirror's selective mutiny. Viewed head-on, they reflect the court's splendor without hint of rebellion, but shift slightly, as a servant might while pouring tea or a nobleman bowing, and the caricatures emerge, visible only from angles associated with subservience. This was a visual coup meant for Persian eyes alone, a way to mock invaders without risking outright provocation. Even the glass itself smuggled a message. Imported from Venice, it was deliberately warped by Persian artisans using a technique called shishe-i shekaste, broken glass, a sly metaphor for the fractured sovereignty they couldn't openly lament. The hall's piece de resistance hides in plain sight. One mirrored panel near the throne dais remains flawless, except when moonlight strikes it through a high, narrow window during the summer solstice. Then the glass projects a distortion-free image of the peacock thrown onto the opposite wall, superimposing it over the caricatures. The effect is unmistakable, Persia's glory, however besieged, enduring beneath the weight of foreign interference. To walk through the Hall of Mirrors today is to witness a masterclass in coded resistance. Every reflection, every carefully calculated warp, speaks to an era when art became the last refuge of dissent. The Qajars may have been forced to sign unfavorable treaties, but here, in this glittering hall, they ensured their true feelings would outshine even the most unyielding glass. From the geometric riddles of Persepolis to the whispering walls of Arg-e-Karim Khan, Persia's monuments are far more than stone and mortar. They're living libraries of encrypted wisdom. Each of these 50 structures holds a key to understanding how ancient architects turned their craft into a language, concealing messages in the curve of an arch or the glaze of a tile. The Apadana staircase's carved delegations weren't just art, they were a diplomatic ledger frozen in limestone. The flickering shadows of Nasir al-Mulk mosque stained glass didn't just dazzle, they charted celestial cycles. Even the humble bricks of Rayan Castle bore survival codes for besieged defenders, their indentations mapping secret water sources like a desert's lifeline. What unites these sites is their creators' shared genius for duality. The Shushta hydraulic system spirals were both engineering blueprints and spiritual mandalas, while the mirror mosaics of Shah Cherogh reflected both divine light and coded Sufi teachings. Persia's artists didn't just build, they spoke in layers, knowing their true audience might be centuries unborn. The tomb of Hafez isn't merely a poet's resting place, it's a celestial compass where tilework aligns with lunar mansions, inviting visitors to seek omens in verse. And high in the Caucasus Mountains, the Towers of Silence whisper Zoroastrian cosmology through the alignment of shadows only the initiated could decipher. This tradition of architectural cryptography stretches beyond any single empire or era. From Elamite ziggurats stamped with cuneiform commodity prices to Qajar palaces where warped mirrors mocked colonial powers, Persia's monuments refused silence. They became repositories of resistance, faith, and scientific ambition, whether encoding Omar Khayyam's star charts in Milad Tower's height or burying Avicenna's medical breakthroughs beneath a numerical chessboard. Now the cipher passes to you. Have you stood where solstice light unveils hidden calligraphy in Finn Garden's waterways, spotted the rebellious fists woven into Naranjistan's lattices? These stones still speak to those who listen closely. Share your theories in the comments, or better yet, walk these sites yourself and trace the grooves left by ancients who trusted future generations to keep decoding their legacy. For more journeys into history's best-kept secrets, hit subscribe and join us as we keep unraveling the past, one monument at a time. The next clue could be waiting beneath your footsteps.